Good evening. I'm Joseph Pereira, Chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Fall River. It is 6 p.m. on Thursday, April 20th, 2023. We are meeting at One Government Center in the first floor hearing room, pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, Subsection F. I hereby notify all persons in attendance that this meeting is being recorded with both video and audio devices. Fall River Government TV, Craig Salvador, is recording both the video and audio version. If anyone desires to make an audio, video, or combination recording thereof of this meeting, please notify me now, and I shall make a public announcement of your intention. There being none. Our recording clerk this evening is Nina Kruger, sitting to my immediate right. Present this evening are our permanent members John Frank, Jim Calkins, Dan Dupere, Ricky Sahady, and myself as chairman. We also have two alternate members sitting this evening, John Sylvia and Eric Kelly. Present also from government are Dan Aguiar at my far left, our Director of Engineering and Planning, and Chris Pereno, our Assistant Planner at my extreme right. It's quite the roll call, isn't it? Nina, have all petitions to be considered been properly advertised and all interested parties notified in accordance with the rules and regulations of the Zoning Board of Appeals in Massachusetts, General Law, Chapter 48?
Yes.
I declare the April 20th, 2023 regularly scheduled meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals open for such business as shall regularly come before it. And I will remind all persons presenting before the board, including petitioners, abutters, anyone in support or opposed to the petition, that your presentations should be limited to 3 minutes. Questions and responses must be directed through the chairman. The board's rules and regulations, direct the board to specifically look for information which supports the petitioner's claim. As such, petitioners should identify and factually support the basis for the petition. I hereby advise petitioners and all interested persons that this board is the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the board's authority exists pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40A, and is limited in scope and deals with the use of land as regulated by Chapter 86 of the ordinances of the City of Fall River. Additional permits, licenses, reviews, and/or approvals may be required for the specific development and/or the use which is the subject of your petition before the zoning board this evening. The clerks in the building, planning, engineering, and licensing departments are competent in the discharge of their duties as clerks. They are, however, not attorneys and not competent to give legal advice. The action taken by this board has a real and lasting effect upon the title of your real estate. I urge all petitioners to seek competent legal counsel before filing your petitions and after the decision of the board has been made. For example, there is a city ordinance 25-11, section 10-11, requiring site plan reviews. A copy of the ordinance is available at the city clerk's office or from the planning department. I remind everyone that the building inspector is the zoning enforcement authority, and you are here this evening because the building inspector has determined that your proposed action is contrary to the City of Fall River zoning ordinances. The city charter section 9-18 mandates that all multiple member bodies develop and adopt rules for policies for public comment. We have adopted such a policy, which in short provides for citizen input on zoning board specific matters at the end of the meeting. If you wish to speak before the board at the end of the meeting, there is a sign-up sheet on the table just outside the doors to the room. I disclose that an official copy of the zoning ordinances is available in the city clerk's office. One cannot rely on the online zoning ordinances. And with that, if there are no questions, we shall begin. I shall begin by starting my new notebook. All right, we go straight, we have no old business, so into new business. Item number 1, David Paveo, care of attorney Arthur D. Frank. I believe attorney Joseph Macy is representing this evening. The property in question is 1000 Blossom Road, map W-15, lot 30. The applicant seeks a special permit to construct a 40-foot by 80-foot garage exceeding height and area requirements in the R80 single-family zoning district with a WWD water and watershed and water supply overlay district.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Joseph Macy. I'm appearing in conjunction with Arthur Frank's appearance. We have an office at 209 Bedford Street. I represent the petitioner, David Paveo, who is here in the front row, and his son, Derek, who is the resident of the property in question. The request tonight is to erect a 40 by 80 garage on the property. Maximum height would be 20 feet. Other than the area, the building would conform with zoning because it's got plenty of setbacks. That's a large L-shaped lot, and to grant the relief requested, the board has to make a couple of findings under our zoning. In the single-family zoning, to grant the special permit, the board has to find that the proposed structure is consistent with neighboring structures and it will not impact the use and enjoyment of the abutting properties. That property is located on Blossom Road, which I would characterize as a rural area. The lots there are big. Some of the houses are fairly new and some of them are quite old. The house next to the subject property is an older dwelling with a large barn. And most of the people up and down that street have large lots, good setbacks. Some of them have farm implements on the property. Some of them have trucks. But basically, it's quite rural, particularly for Fall River. It's abutting, I guess, the reservation, which brings me to the fact that we also need in order to receive the special permit, that the board finds it's in harmony with and consistent with the intent and purposes of the watershed and water supply protection district. It's appropriate to the natural topography. It won't have an adverse environmental impact on any aquifer, and it won't affect adversely any existing developed or planned water supply. And it's consistent with existing and probable future development of contiguous areas. As I said, the area is rural. The houses are well-kept, fairly substantial. Most of them appear to my eye, and by measurement, to be about an acre. With respect to the watershed, our property, which has the existing house, and you see where the proposed garage is L-shaped. Behind, I'm going to call it behind our property, is vacant land, a power easement, and then west of the power easement, you come to what I would call the watershed, although I know it's our watershed, and the North Watuppa Pond. I suggest that the building in question, which we submitted plans of, is appropriate. It won't take up an inordinate amount of space. It is going to be used solely for his personal property. Now, he does have some equipment which he will store inside. He has a construction business, but the construction business has a location off of Brayton Avenue near the beginning of the Quipushan Rail Trail. So any concerns the board might have about this building being used for his construction business, Derek is here and his father is here, and I can tell you on their behalf that they have no intention of using it for anything other than their own property. Now, if you go up and down that road as I did, you'll see that personal property in that area can be a little bigger than the average wheelbarrow and lawnmower, but they have a substantial amount of land, and I guess you could see the proposed garage from the street, but I think in keeping with the neighborhood and the protection of the watershed, it's an appropriate use. So at this point, I think we are able to satisfy the requirements of both 86-466 and 86-435, and I'd ask the board to grant the request. I think I said this, but I'll repeat it. Derek Payroll lives there, and his father, David, owns the property. They're both here to answer any questions you might have if I can't answer them.
Very good, thank you. It's true, most people that don't know Fall River, or even if they know Fall River, drive down that road and into that section, and it's hard to believe it's part of the city. It's actually quite nice out there. And you're right, very rural. So this is specifically non-business for the garage?
Absolutely.
So this would just be for cars, ATVs, boats, et
Cars,
cetera, that type of thing?
ATVs, equipment, and possessions, similar to what you see in the other yards. Almost everybody seems to have a truck or two.
Somebody's got a whole John Deere collection out in their yard, so it's.
The house right next door,
Yeah, I know.
which is older, actually has probably more possessions and property than anybody else, but it actually fits in with the neighborhood. But the reason Derek wants to build the garage is to store his personal property and keep it safe and away from the elements.
Makes sense. Makes sense. It's just a small thing on the application. I noticed that variance was not checked off on this, but variance, a reason for variance is specified. No hardship was brought in. Just checking boxes at this point to
Well,
make sure.
we're looking for a special permit, which I think, that's why we cited the ordinances. We comply with the exception, special permit. We comply with the exception of the size of the building. The setbacks are more than adequate.
You're correct. It's just the way this is filled out, it kind of blew my mind. Questions from board members at this point?
Yeah, Your Honor, you're referred to section 86-435 as the second criteria?
The second,
Well, you referred to, me, I don't see that section. To me, the reading of.
appropriate to the natural topography,
Yeah, well, what section are you?
that's 86-345B2.
3, I'm sorry.
345, yeah.
That's right.
I can-
To
I
me,
can
the
give you
86,
my copy.
I mean, the
I'd
other
have to do it by
section
memory.
meets the full qualifications of it.
Under 466.
Yeah, 466 special permit, it meets that, I mean,
446 is, 466
it
is
meets
a
that
separate
alone,
section.
yeah. Right,
And if it weren't in the watershed protection district, we
It
would
would
only be
suffice.
applying under 86-466.
Okay,
It's going to be a single story,
Yes,
but 18 feet?
it's, the
you said no more than 20?
ordinance requires or specifies a maximum of 18 feet. This will be at 20 feet at the peak.
20. And access to it, what side is the driveway going to be on?
If, I need two sets of glasses.
It's
If-
to the left
if you
side of the
go
home,
in-
along the tree line.
Oh,
From
yeah,
Blossom Road, if you go up the paved driveway, yes, and then you take a right, that back L is gravel, that will be the access to the proposed garage, so there won't be any necessity for curb cuts, although there's no curbs out there anyway.
Right. Yeah, the circular driveway already exists, so you're just gonna come off of that. Anything else, John?
Bathroom?
Are you gonna put a restroom in the garage?
No, he said,
Okay.
I don't think so, no, it's simply storage and
All right.
they have the pool and they have the house. There's no separation, so
Okay.
the answer, the direct answer is no.
Anyone else, John?
Just have one question. You had mentioned earlier that he may bring equipment home from his business site.
It's, well, number one, that's not the intention. And number two.
But you had mentioned it previously. I just want to get
I just
confirmation.
want to, you're right, I just want to make sure the board understands. There's no need, desire, or necessity to do that because they have a separate, I call it a staging area, a separate location for their construction equipment. So it'd actually be counterproductive for them to bring some of it home. I'm not saying they won't ever bring a pickup truck home, but that's absolutely a barn for personal
Is
use.
the property near, you said near the Quikasham, is that the area that they're building up now? At the bottom of right now?
I'm more than familiar with the Quikasham Rail Trail.
Yeah, no, I know you are. No, I didn't
It's
know.
across, this is across the street. It's where the big ledge is at the beginning of, to get on the rail trail, you'd have to take a right off Brayton Avenue.
Yep.
And this, once you get on the rail trail, this is to the left.
Okay. So they have a decent amount of heavy equipment in that area, tearing
Absolutely.
things
He's
down
gonna-
and stuff now,
He's
so.
got enough room, he rented it.
Yep.
And I think, I just want to reiterate, he lives there, so he's not interested in bringing his work home.
Having a row of backhoes across the back of the property, yeah. I get it. Any other questions from the board? Anything from planning on this, Dan?
First, I'll offer that the board can only act on the request with regards to a special permit to 86-466. No request was made with regards to 86-341 watershed and water supply protection district. So if you grant a special permit under 86-466, the applicant will have to comply with all regulations of the watershed and water supply protection district.
We know that, we intend to do that.
Well, no,
We-
you said you wanted another special permit from that section. of
No,
the
I
bylaw.
was citing both sections so
Right,
that
because
the
you
board,
know you're
so
gonna
that
get
the
one
board
special
is
permit.
aware that we comply with both sections. We understand we're in a watershed development district, and we understand that there are special regulations which apply to us.
Right, including 345, which deals with special permits just for that section. I just want to make sure that you're getting the relief you need, and you may not have to come back again.
But, Dan,
But
if you're saying that the B under that section
Under
says
what?
that you can't grant a special permit unless it is in compliance with
Well, there's,
that section.
but in the application and the
Yeah, it
advertisement.
doesn't have that, yeah.
They did not, so you're not looking at this Division 4 at all. You're only dealing with the size of this structure tonight. Anything else in the zoning bylaw, he needs to comply with. So when he submits for site plan review, the response will be, do you comply with sections Division 4, 86-341 through 51, 351, which is all of the different requirements of what's allowed in that overlay district. None of that is being waived tonight. So just to be clear, I want to make sure that they feel that they can comply with all of those sections. And then also under 86-466 that you're moving, I would call out that the proposed structure is 3,200 square feet, 40 by 80. And when you read 86-466, really the only sentence that matters having to do with the issuance of a special permit states, "The zoning board of appeals may grant a special permit for the construction of a garage or shed in excess of the maximum size, provided the board finds that the scale of the proposed structure is consistent with neighboring structures, and that the proposed structure will not impact the use and enjoyment of the abutting properties." I don't know what other structure this 40 by 80 garage is consistent with. So it's very simple with what you need to look at. So you need to make the determination that it's consistent with
And-
structures in the neighborhood.
And in
And
viewing
that's
the
why I-
neighborhood, there are barns out there, there are,
Yep.
other,
Right, but are they
Storage
40 by
structures,
80?
et cetera.
So
No, they're
I
not,
understand.
because we want the 40 by 80 because it's bigger than the 750 square feet. But if you, when you go out there, it's more than consistent with other structures in the area.
So there are structures that are 3,200 square foot garages and barns in that area?
They're bigger.
Or even
The-
houses?
The house right next door,
Well, there's a plan that shows a barn next door.
That's
And
right.
it doesn't seem anywhere close to the size of this one.
well,
The plan that you see there.
it may not seem that way on the plan. I want to assume that they drew it to scale. However, it's a typical old, I would call it a Westport barn, because we don't have a lot of barns.
No,
in
no,
Florida.
I understand, but
it's
the
two
bylaw
stories,
says
And it's,
consistent with abutting structures.
and if you take the 2 stories and get the square footage and the cubic footage, it's bigger, it's higher than this, it's not bigger. Across the street, which doesn't show on the plan, there's a garage, pretty sizable, that looks like it straddles two properties. But farther up the hill, on this side, there's a very long, fairly low structure. I'd say the structure probably has a roof of 16 feet. So this size, particularly in that configuration on that size lot, which is, I think, almost an acre, is consistent with other properties in the area.
Okay. If the board feels comfortable with that, then that's for your own determinations.
thank you, Dan. Anything else?
Oh, and then I also don't see in the application anywhere or in the advertisement what the height of the structure was to be. We're being told 20 feet tonight, but I didn't see that as part of the application. I think you can still deal with it, but it might have been fair to people to possibly understand what the height of the structure would be.
Okay. We got a complete set of plans. I,
No, there's no, we have a site plan that says a 40 by 80 garage.
Mhm.
It doesn't say it's 20 feet high.
no, it doesn't.
No.
That's why I said it tonight.
So it should have been in the
And it's-
application, it should have been in the advertisement, it should have been in the public notice.
Well, it can also, and we would have no objection to the board putting it in its findings, not more than 20 feet.
Which based upon testimony, I would hope when the motion is made, that be included. That's typical, so. Anyone here to speak in favor of this petition?
If the owner and, it could just be recorded in favor, you know.
Anyone to speak in opposition to the petition? Take the gentleman in the hat first, if you could stand and get to, close enough to a microphone, identify yourself with your address, please.
My name's Frederick Astle. I live at 1025 Blossom Road, directly across from 1000 Blossom Road. Mr. Frank, I presume?
Joe Macy.
Sorry?
Joe Macy, I work with ARPA.
Okay. Mr. Macy mentioned that I have a long building in the back of my property. It's 8 feet high. It's 25 by 60. It's on my deed. It was back in the 50s and 60s. It was literally a dog kennel.
No, okay.
So, you know, it's used obviously for lawnmowers and stuff like that, you know. You know, nothing personal, obviously, but, you know, it is a watershed area. Growing up in that neighborhood, I've lived there since 1968. And, you know, it's always been watershed, protected area. To this day now, they don't even put rock salt down out in that neighborhood. Being a diesel mechanic, I work for the city. I know what it's like to see hydraulic spills. I see equipment, there's construction equipment on the property. Construction equipment rolls out at anywheres between 4:30 and 5 o'clock every morning. I know the gentleman here mentioned that it's not going to be used for construction purposes. There's a lot of construction equipment on the property. I do recognize that I've seen it on Brayton Avenue on my way to work every day, but it is kept on Blossom Road. There's a lot of equipment there. My concern would be a spill. This proposed building is perhaps between 500 and 800 feet right from the edge of the pond. I know the area very well. I was brought up there. Excuse me. You know, it's nothing personal. I'm probably one of 4 houses on Blossom Road that actually has a view to the pond. And this particular building right here takes care of that. We will never see the water again. That being said, gentlemen, young lady, I yield.
Okay. Appreciate that, thank you. And the other gentleman, I think there was just 2 of you?
Good evening. This is, so with my comments. My name is Michael LaBossiere. I work at 2929 Blossom Road. I'm the City of Fall River Water Department forester, the reservation, or judge. I speak tonight on behalf of the Watuppa Water Board and the community, Department of Community Utilities. We wish to express opposition to the application seeking a special permit to construct a 40 by 80 garage on the premises of 1000 Blossom Road. The property is presently not in compliance with R80 residential zoning. The property has not been in compliance since Fall River Building Inspector Glenn Hathaway received numerous complaints from neighbors in 2019. At that time, Inspector Hathaway visited the property and spoke to the owner. Present use of the property also exceeds the intent and purpose established within City Ordinance, Chapter 86, Division 4, Sections 341, 351, the Watershed and Water Supply Protection District Regulations. The parcel is within 1,000 feet of the city's primary drinking water supply reservoir, the North Watuppa Pond. Continued use of the parcel for storage of large numbers of vehicles as well as construction materials presents an unnecessary burden of risk of contamination and other environmental degradation addressed within this ordinance. Neither the city nor its residents should be asked to accept this risk when ordinance specifically prohibits it. Issuing a special permit for this building will only serve to sustain and promote expansion of a non-conforming use. This represents a nuisance to neighbors and a risk to the city's water supply. We respectfully ask that you deny this request.
Very good.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
We could have addressed on site many of Mr. LaBossiere's objections if we had known about them, but nobody contacted us. Secondly, we are happy to live with any restrictions the board puts on with respect to construction equipment. Now, if the board wants to take a site visit, we'll make that available to the board. I would point out that I didn't point out in my original presentation, between the back line of this property and the pond, which I'll take his measurements, I thought it was farther away, there's a very wide utility easement
Right.
with, I'll say huge towers, they probably the standard size high power line that probably sits on a 40 or 50-foot wide easement area. Generally, they take a bigger easement. Those lines, I'm sure, are inspected from time to time by vehicles. If there's any repairs necessary, heavy equipment has to go there. I can understand if they thought we were going to operate construction vehicles there, why they might object. But as I said, they're not going to be there. They're going to be inside. There might be one a truck on the property today that I don't think is going to stay there, but I'll just repeat myself. He has a construction site, off-site, where he stores and operates his construction business.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Ricky.
I've heard several times, Attorney Macy, you mentioned this, personal property only and not business property. Listening to Mr. Haskell, listening to you, I guess I'm sort of confused. What is the nuance that separates personal property from business property? Because if there's something stored at the business and it's brought home, isn't that personal property now? Does it not become personal property? So I'm not sure what the nuance is that separates the two.
Well, I'll tell you what I mean, and the board can debate it as they will. In that area, including the house next door, not Mr. Haskell's, there are a number of houses, properties that have farm implements, plows, rakes. That's personal property, but it could also be used for business. What I understood, what I understand the objection might be or would be, is because he has a construction business, people might legitimately be concerned that he have road graders, backhoes, construction equipment stored in that barn or in that garage, which is why he's not building it. So the difference between business property and personal property, I understand what you're talking about. I mean, if I have a car and I use it for deliveries, that might be a business purpose. But I suppose I could have said construction equipment, and that might have made it a little more definite. But I don't know what else to say other than welcome to come out if you want to take a view.
Well,
Welcome to restrict it, however you want to do it.
And with all due respect, my biggest problem is the fact that although you mentioned Division 4 in the criteria, as pointed out by our planning director, it's not even included in the application itself. So, to me, the biggest issue here is the fact that it's in the watershed overlay, that it is within 1,000 feet of the pond itself, and that wasn't even fully addressed. I mean, at this point in time, you know, again, as Mr. Aguirre pointed out, we can't even address the whole issue here. So, I don't know how you want to proceed. We can proceed and act upon the application that we have based upon the presentation tonight, but it's not complete, in my eye.
Well, I mean, it would be complete for the relief that was requested,
Right.
but that may not get him to a building permit. He may need to come back at another time. May or may not. They may be able to submit site plan review that shows that they're in compliance with everything in those sections. I didn't look at those sections for compliance because it wasn't part of the application.
But then there's a fine line because whose purview is it under? So.
As far as-
Planning can't,
Oh, no, it would end up to the zoning enforcement officer to
Right.
determine whether or not he's in
Can
compliance
I-
with that section of zoning.
Can
And
I
when you read
suggest
through
this?
that section, the level of permitting that needs to go, it goes to a number of different agencies for permitting anything that's allowed in that zoning district. So
Right.
there are other eyes, but he would have no relief from anything listed in that section. Unless the building inspector just issued the permit in disregard of zoning, which I don't think that would be the
I
case.
doubt Glenn would do
If I
that.
may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Let me suggest that you table this matter so we can look at it. With respect to what we have to do after the fact, the other regulations we have to satisfy, that's for a different time and a different board and different regulations. As I said, before tonight, we didn't have a chance to even hear from or talk to Mr. Labossiere. After we talked to him, we may not have a conclusion anyway, but I'd request that the matter be tabled so that we can address the concerns raised by Mr. Aguirre and the other board members.
And I don't, and that'll be up to the board if they want to issue that. In all due respect, you pointed out that what would be needed in your presentation would be the effect on, or the consistency with the neighborhood, and the consistency with basically Division 4. And Division 4, if not in whole, in parts, does fall under the purview of this board. So we would, for you to have a complete application, we would have to act on Division 4 as part of this. So, it's my opinion. I leave it to the board. Somebody wants to make a motion to table to next month?
I would make that motion, Mr. Chairman. I think that's the fair thing to do. Table until
Thank
next
you,
week.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that?
Is-
Hearing none.
Joe,
Yeah, sorry.
is Mr. Sahadi on this?
Hmm?
Is Mr. Sahadi on this?
Yes.
Yeah? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
No.
No, it's all the city members are
Yeah,
voting.
he's-
on
He's
this
a
one,
city
right?
member.
Yes.
He's not an alternate anymore.
Okay, sorry.
No, he's not an alternate anymore.
Wow.
New digs, new
You lost
digs.
me for a moment.
See, you fall asleep for one meeting?
Yeah, I know. That being the case, on the motion, John Frank,
Yes.
Jim Calkins.
Yes.
Dan DePere.
Yes.
Ricky Sahadi.
Yes.
And Chairman Prairie, yes. Thank you very much. Item number 2. Pardon? Civitex, PC.
Do we need to set a
Pardon?
meeting certain to the table, or can it just be an open?
It's gotta be for next month. It'll be for next month, unless they want to do otherwise.
I'm
sorry.
I wondered because we didn't state it. No, no, if you think it's automatic.
Yeah. I'm sorry, item number 2, Civitex PC, care of Attorney John J. Coughlin. The subject property is 472 Walnut Street, map M28, lot 57. The applicant seeks a variance to change the use of a structure from a single-family residence to professional office building in an A2 apartment zoning district. Counsel?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Attorney John Coughlin of 57 North Main Street, here on behalf of the applicant Civitex PC. We're here tonight to request a variance to change the use of the structure at 472 Walnut Street from a residential property, single-family, to a professional office. Just by way of background, Civitex is a small family business operated by Michael and Ann Keene, husband and wife. Ann is here with me, and Michael is sitting behind us. They currently have an office in the city of Fall River, and they are seeking to relocate from their current business location to the Walnut Street property. They're a professional architectural firm. Most of their work is done in the city. They do a lot of historic preservation projects. In this case, they have no plans to change the structure of the building or the footprint of the building. They're looking to restore this property and use it for an office use. They've received letters of support from both the Historical Commission and the Historical Society. Their business hours are normal, typical business hours, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. They have currently 3 full-time employees. 2 of them commute together to work. They are not looking to expand the number of employees at the business. This property does have a driveway for off-street parking to accommodate those employees. And due to the nature of the business, most of their client meetings are off-site, either at the client's office or online. They very rarely have clients at the office. They will be the only business located in this building, so won't be multiple business, it'll be just theirs. This location in the past has been used as a business continuously since the 1980s. There was previously a catering business and a bookkeeping business at this location. There are numerous single-family dwellings in this neighborhood that were constructed between the mid-1800s and the early 1900s. They've been converted into multifamily residences or businesses, so it's typical in this area of town to have this kind of conversion. There's a business located across the street from this property, and there are other businesses located on the same block as this property. The irony in this application is they're currently in a commercial business location downtown, which is being converted to residential, so they're seeking to move into this historic building. It's a nice project for the city. I think it'll preserve this historic property without a tremendous amount of impact on the neighborhood. And based on all of those factors, we would respectfully request that the board grant this variance, and we'll answer any questions that you may have.
It's one of my favorite houses in the city. It's very unique architecturally, and it would be great to see it restored. The catering business, and this is just a curiosity, because that was approved by this body actually not all that long ago, not
Well,
that
no.
many.
1984, there was a variance to operating a
Was
catering
it
business
really?
out of the basement kitchen of a single-family home.
Okay,
So it was still a single-family
but there
home.
was no changes since '84.
2008, there was a special permit to operate a bookkeeping business from
Okay.
a single-family home.
All right.
A variance, sorry,
So it
special
was
permit.
home
Again,
profession, yeah.
for home occupation. Still, it wasn't, you weren't getting rid of the single-family home conforming portion of the project. Where if this was a petition for living in the single-family home and operating a business and meeting the requirements of that section, limiting you to the amount of square footage and everything else for the business part of it. But that's not what's before you. This is to convert the entire structure.
3 full-time employees, there is a driveway that can probably hold 3 or 4 vehicles, I'm not sure. Do you consider your parking adequate for your needs at
Yes.
this location?
Yes.
For the employees that you have now?
Yes.
I will agree that in case of those architectural firms, the engineering firms, it's on site very seldom. I have engineers I've worked with for decades that have never set foot in their office space. Application looks fine. Questions from the board at this point?
My concern is if we grant a variance to allow a business to operate there. Right now, we have a business that has very little customers coming in. But unless we put the proper restrictions on, and that business gets sold, that variance applies to any business that moves into that property.
It would have to be a professional office, if that helps. That's the application.
But the professional office could be a law
Some
firm that
professional
has
offices are
people in
busy,
and out.
like your office, very busy.
You know, law firm, accounting firm, people coming and going, especially tax season, trying to find places to park on the street. It's a very
It's
valid
just
point.
how to put that protection into any consideration.
It's a very good point, Jim. Anyone else?
Signage?
An architecturally designed sign that is of what size?
We're not looking for neon lights or anything like that. Probably something that would be, on the window glass or, or something that would be wooden or something that would,
Not detract from the building.
building.
Non-illuminated.
No, we're not, we have enough work, we're not looking to advertise. Our work advertises for us.
The previous granted relief for the bookkeeping business was a non-illuminated 3x3 wall sign may be installed,
That's
which
more
technically
than fair.
still exists.
It-
The sign doesn't exist physically, but
That was in.
that
I'm sure there's some
2008
market
grant
there.
might still be
I
considered
didn't
valid.
notice that,
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if they ever did it,
yeah.
if they ever acted on that, then they still have a permit. to
We
do
have a
it.
guideline, okay, and a permit.
I
So there you
think
go.
we could live with the 3 by.
Design something beautiful, 3x3.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just to Jim's point also, is it within the authority of this board, if we grant this request, to put restrictions on it as such? Because it is granted in perpetuity. But is it within our authority to designate what that is? In
So
other
we're-
words, to Jim's point, where, it could be used if the building is sold, and now we've granted the permit, it could be used for a law firm or anything else.
Correct.
Is it within our authority to restrict?
I do
The
not
usage.
believe so, because the professional office space is defined within our bylaw. it's broad enough. So we can't really suddenly say,
You could probably tie it to required parking. And then if the zoning enforcement officer determined that the change in use triggered additional parking spaces other than what's being provided, then additional relief could be required. There are a number of things that you could add in that would help, would not solve the problem.
yeah,
We could narrow it, we cannot eliminate.
You can narrow it down the best
We
you
can-
can.
but we can't say it can only be.
Mm.
You know, so that's unfortunately, not unfortunately, maybe fortunately, outside of our purview, so. Any other questions? Is there anyone in attendance this evening that would like to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone to speak in opposition? That being the case, we go to the board.
You want to discuss hours of operation?
Yeah.
Or potential hardship to hang your hat on? This is variance, not a special permit.
Yeah, Attorney Cochran's got that, though.
I have something that just popped into my brain here.
Yeah.
Contractual interest, so you don't own the building?
We don't own the building as the architectural business, but we do own the property as another business.
Okay, that was my
So we
question.
are the
There's-
sole owners of that property
So-
and of the business.
So you are
Yep.
Langley property
Properties
as well?
Yes,
Gotcha, just making sure. 'Cause,
yeah,
So you're gonna rent to yourselves.
yes.
And the hours are actually listed
Yeah, we had
in,
Yeah,
not in the
yeah.
request, but in the detrimental portion. So just, I would make that a condition if you.
Yeah,
so-
it's Monday
so
to Friday,
decide.
8 to 5 is the.
So that does leave the big question, what is the hardship involved?
It's a use variance, so we're not seeking any change in the structure or any dimensional changes. It's not contrary to the public interest. You know, this is a property that's been used in the past for businesses, and it's in a neighborhood where other structures are being used similarly to this one. So, and it's an attempt to save and store property that otherwise probably wouldn't be occupied.
It's always the tough part with the use variance, because you're basically saying we can't possibly use it for anything else but
Understood?
a professional office space. Can you tell us that? I'm not trying to be
No,
sarcastic,
I-
it's just, I want to cover our bases, your
totally-
bases. There's
totally
nobody here in
understand.
opposition, so I don't think there'll be pitchforks and blazing torches outside the building when you open the office, but
But that doesn't mean that an appeal won't come from somewhere, and you need to.
That's correct.
You need to hang your hat on something.
We think the office space is the best use of this property. It's historical to this property. I think trying to convert it to residential would not be practical.
Yeah.
members of this august panel, what say ye? I've been working with the British chap all week, so I'm just...
I'll make a motion to grant with the condition of professional office use only. Hours of operation stated, I'm sorry, it was 9 to
8 to 5,
8 to 5.
Monday to Friday.
Non-illuminated 3x3 wall sign,
3 parking spaces.
minimum of 3 off-street parking spaces.
Site plan review. Site plan review.
Site plan is
Absolutely.
given, yeah. That's my motion.
I'll second.
Is that Ricky? Is that Dan? See, I understand now. I get it. Discussion on the motion. Additions or deletions to it at this point? I think we covered ourselves as best as we can. That being the case, John Frank?
Yes.
Jim Calkins?
Yes.
Dan DePere?
Yes.
Ricky Sahadi?
Yes.
And Chairman Pereira, yes. Congratulations, best of luck. Can't wait to
very
see
much.
what
Thank you
that
for your
looks
time
like.
tonight.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, but it's beyond that they added. Stuff about the hours, the size of the sign.
Item number 3, I must recuse myself from this item.
Yeah.
Vice Chair John Frank will chair, and alternate member John Sylvia will be able to vote on this one, will be an active member on this one.
you squeeze?
That's my key though. Okay, we're calling item number 3, Vertec Towers LLC, 42 Estes Lane, map D04, lot 26. Application seeks a special permit to construct a 336-foot tall cell tower in a commercial
136.
I'm sorry, 136 high cell tower in a commercial mill district.
Try a new electronic system here. Good evening, my name is Francis Parisi. I'm an attorney with an office in Providence, Rhode Island, representing the applicant for Vertex Towers LLC. We are here tonight seeking a special permit to construct a radio transmission tower, what the real world calls it a cell tower, at 42 Estes Lane, which is a piece of property in the Industrial Commercial Mill District zoning district. We don't need any variances. We comply with the zoning bylaw in all respects, so we're only here for a special permit. By way of introduction, Vertex Towers is not a wireless cell phone company that you've heard of before, like Verizon or AT&T. We're what we call a wireless infrastructure developer. We build wireless infrastructure and then lease space. And what's happened in the telecommunications world is that the names you've heard of, like AT&T and Verizon, have pretty much gotten out of the real estate business and have partnered up with various infrastructure developers like Vertex. In this particular case, we've partnered up with AT&T Wireless to help them improve their telecommunications coverage in the town of, in the city of Fall River. And so we are building this tower primarily for AT&T, but we're also agnostic in the sense that we build infrastructure that supports multiple telecommunications companies. So we build it with the requisite height and structural integrity to accommodate multiple companies. And we've already had some inquiries from T-Mobile and Verizon, and we suspect as we get farther along in the process that we will have commitments from them as well. I submitted a very extensive application package that both required under the zoning bylaw and under some federal regulations. As this board is probably aware, wireless infrastructure development has great oversight by the federal government. The federal government is very supportive of wireless infrastructure development, and it requires us to make sure we satisfy certain things, and it puts certain restrictions on the board's ability to regulate these facilities over and above Mass General laws. I don't know that I need to sell wireless telecommunications. I know we all have a cell phone here. I know it all works. But the statistics are staggering. There are now more wireless subscribers than landline subscribers. 50% of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is wireless only and have cut the landline. 80% of 911 calls are made by mobile phones. And over the last several years, people are working from home, trying to educate from home and telecommuting. And mobile technology has become more and more required. It's also becoming a public safety issue. As people get more dependent on wireless phones, they need to be able to get a quality signal in order to make a 911 call. And so, we just need to make sure we keep cognizant of the fact that public safety, and also your own municipal public safety, rely on commercial networks as well as backup systems. So we need to make sure that they have adequate telecommunications coverage. This area of this area of Fall River, the southern end of Fall River, the 42 Estes Lanes is down right off of Route 24 in the Commercial Mill District at the southern end of Fall River towards the Tiverton border. And this area is a very heavily developed residential area with small pockets of commercial and some business on the other side of Route 24. And the dilemma that we have in the industry is that this is becoming more and more of a residential technology. When we first started building these networks, we thought we'd provide coverage along Route 195 and Route 24 and Route 138. But as we've seen over the last several years, people are using them in their homes. And so what we're trying to do is improve coverage in residential neighborhoods while still not having a significant impact on residential neighborhoods. Why Estes Lane? We've done a lot of research in the area. We need tall structures, and I know, because I've been in front of this board several times, many years ago, there are exactly a lot of tall structures in Fall River, and there actually are not a lot of new towers because of the fact that, as an industry, we've been able to utilize smokestacks and church steeples and water tanks and other tall structures for the benefit of the industry, but also for the benefit of the city of Fall River. But in this particular area, there's really nothing tall that's suitable to provide the coverage. And the other issue that we have here is that as telephone networks get more and more developed, the gaps in coverage get smaller and way more defined. So we can't go a half a mile or a mile away because chances are we're already on those facilities, or we're trying to cover a very defined area. Whereas when we first came to town 20 years ago, we were trying to cover as much of Fall River as possible. We didn't have a network, and now that we have a network, we have to be much more targeted with where we go. The area around, we've submitted a lot of graphics here as part of the original application. There are some tall structures. There's a water tank about a half a mile away. There's some towers that are already being utilized by AT&T along the Route 195 corridor, and some rooftops along going towards 138. But there's really nothing in this mile radius or mile diameter circle that satisfies the coverage objective. And the area itself, Estes Lane is right in here in the middle. It's surrounded by other, I'd call them small industrial. The facility itself is going to be located on a facility that's a light manufacturing, a metal fabrication shop. Across the street is a big staging area used by National Grid, and there's some other light industrial area. And as we go farther farther east towards the river, there it actually gets into undevelopable wetlands. So we were very challenged in finding any areas that we could actually put a facility like this. We identified, we talked to probably half a dozen or 12 different landowners in the area, and to try to find suitable land. The land on the other side of the highway is mostly business used for big box retail with very extensive parking restrictions, so they didn't have any land to give us. The other lots in the area were developed or wet, or so there really wasn't any choice here to go anywhere but 42 Estes Lane. The lot itself is kind of odd-shaped. It's at the intersection of Estes Lane and Larch Street. It's right up against Route 24, so the road kind of circles around back. The facility itself will be right up against Route 24, behind an existing industrial building. Access will come off of Larch Street. Other than fencing off about a 3,600 square foot compound, really there's nothing being done on the lot. We'll build a small foundation for the tower, build some small foundations for the equipment, but the remainder of the lot will stay intact, where it's pretty much all asphalt with the existing business, and we're not really changing any of that. The facility itself is unmanned and passive. Once they're built, nobody goes there. Someone might go by once a month to make sure the fence is intact, but all the equipment is remotely monitored, so it doesn't generate any traffic or noise or commercial activity. It's actually very passive in nature, and much less impactful to the neighborhood than the existing businesses that are already there. The facility itself is what we call a monopole. I don't know that there are any in the city of Fall River, but there's lots of monopoles as you drive around the area. It's a singular pole that has different antennas attached at the top stretch platforms. You'll see there's antennas that AT&T will put at the top. That's about a 12-foot wide platform with about 4 foot to 6 foot tall antennas. And then we've left space on it for other telecommunications companies. The announcement said it was 136 feet. The structure is actually 130 feet tall, and at the top there's a very small lightning rod, which actually attracts electricity that attaches to a very extensive grounding system so that it dissipates electrical. So it actually creates more safety for the area by attracting lightning in the event of things and then dissipating it very safely through that thing. But there's a very small lightning rod. It's probably smaller than that flagpole there, and you won't see it when it's actually built, but technically it's there. These facilities, and I know you guys all know this because there's lots of similar facilities all through the city of Fall River, they're very safe. They're very low-powered facilities. These facilities aren't designed to broadcast throughout all of Fall River or all of the South Coast. They're designed to cover a few miles maybe in each direction. And they're very heavily federally regulated by the federal government and are very well in excess of applicable FCC limits. And what we're projecting this tower will do is provide much better coverage for that southern residential area of Fall River going to the Tiverton border, and then providing some coverage towards the Market Basket area and the residential neighborhood on the other side of Route 24. I submitted a very extensive memorandum going through all the requirements for a special permit here. We need to show that it's the most appropriate use of land, that it prevents overcrowding, that it conserves value of land and buildings, it lessens congestions in the streets and avoids undue concentration of population, and it provides adequate provisions for transportation, water, sewage, schools, and all that stuff. This is really non-impactful to the city of Fall River. It provides a great benefit by providing additional telecommunications service. There's no noise, smoke, lights, odor. We submitted a memorandum that shows that there's no requirement to provide FCC lighting or anything, or FAA lighting, so it'll be very quiet and passive, not generate any kind of traffic or have any impact on the residential neighborhood nearby. We satisfy all that. And then the last thing I got to say, and I'm trying to go as fast as possible, I know you're limited in time. The federal government is very involved in wireless infrastructure development. About 25 years ago, they adopted laws to encourage this type of development. They want towns to act as expeditiously as possible in reviewing applications. They don't say you have to say yes, but it does basically say you can't say no unless there's sufficient reason. And in this particular case, because we're in an industrial zone, because we don't require any variances, because we have no impact on the neighborhood, I don't see any reason why the town would want to deny this type of application. So at this point, I'd like to open up for questions. I've gone very fast because my time is limited, but we would respectfully request that the zoning board grant the special permit so we can move forward with the project. And the last thing I want to say is, unlike a lot of development in the city of Fall River, because we're federally licensed, we're also federally regulated, and we have to do an immense amount of federal due diligence on top of the local and state requirements for any kind of development. We're subject to a very extensive Environmental Protection Act called the National Environmental Policy Act, and it requires us to do extensive due diligence to make sure we have no impact on Native American resources and endangered species and endangered wildlife and migratory birds and all kinds of other things like that. So we're still in the early stages of development, and if this board were to approve this special permit, and then we have to go through a very long and extensive federal regulatory process to make sure we comply with all the federal requirements. And we're confident that we will. Our real estate professionals are very competent in securing areas. We don't think there's going to be any endangered species or Native American resources or things like that. But the point of that is that we still have some federal due diligence that we need to do before this facility will be built. So with that, I'd open up for questions. I tried to go as fast as possible, but we can slow it down as we like.
I have a question regarding, you mentioned it a few times, that you have no need for a variance. Can you talk a little bit more about the height requirement?
It's my understanding that telecommunications towers are exempt from the height limits of the zoning bylaw because we are a special permit requirement. So we had to come to the zoning board for a special permit, but we don't need a height variance.
I think the special permit is with regards to use,
That's correct.
not height.
Not height.
It's a structure, setbacks.
Right.
80-foot height requirement.
We don't need, but I know, but there's the height limitations don't apply to telecommunications towers.
Why do they not? If it's considered a structure in our bylaw by definition.
I spoke to the zoning enforcement officer, we spoke very specifically about this, and he said that it doesn't, because it's a special permit use, there's an exemption for towers.
I don't know where that exemption comes from, but
I mean, we'll certainly seek a variance if it's required. The zoning enforcement officer didn't think that was necessary.
I'm a little concerned about the timing that you indicated, that there's a lot of steps after this before you can really begin. Any idea on what your minimum or average amount of time might be, just whether or not the granting of the permit would give you enough time to execute it?
We're hoping to build this before the winter.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it's about a 4-month regulatory process. The biggest, every project that we need to do, we need to notify about 40 Native American tribes, and they have a requisite of time to reply, to make sure we don't have any impact on Native American resources. And that, given the volume of tribes that say they have some activity here in Fall River, just takes time to get response.
Any other questions from the board?
So it would be like a 7-story building though, roughly, this tower, right?
Well, I wouldn't call it a building, it's definitely a
No, it's
structure.
not, I mean, but the
It's a
height of a
structure, I agree with
7-story
you,
building,
engineer.
roughly.
But it's basically
No, like a
a very large
13-story
pole.
What's that?
13-story building.
13, okay, I'm sorry, 13. All right, so that's,
It's a pole.
Okay.
It's a single pole that,
Can you go back, again, you talked about a 3,600 square feet approximately site, so it's, what, 60 by 60?
it's, the compound is tucked back in here, you can really barely see the line, but it's kind of an odd-shaped compound, so it's, I took that off the drawings, but it's about probably 50 feet by 30 feet by 40 feet by 20 feet. something
So
like
it's just a pole, no utility building, or there will be
What's-
power and other
What's
stuff?
happening is that telecommunications equipment is actually getting smaller, and it fits inside like refrigerator-sized cabinets. So inside that 3,600 square foot compound will be some small equipment cabinets.
Okay.
But there's no building, they don't require cooling anymore, so there's no HVAC or anything like that. The antennas are getting a little smarter. There's more electronics in the antennas up in the air, which means that the electronics on the ground are getting smaller.
Any other questions from the board?
I just have one more. What would this be comparable to towers that we have in Fall River? I know there's a big one on President Avenue in that plaza. Would it be comparable to that one?
No, I was involved in that a long time ago. Isn't that a lattice-style tower where it's like an erector set? And I think that's probably 170 feet tall. This is much smaller. Unfortunately, I can't think of anything that it's similar to in Fall River. There's similar ones.
It's a large flagpole.
I know there's one in Swansea, right on Route 6, behind the fire station in Swansea. I'm trying to think what else close by. We built similar type of stuff. It's a large pole. All the cabling goes up inside, and then there's antennas at the top. So it's much less visually impactful than the big erector set up by President Avenue.
Is there anyone here in favor? Anyone opposed? Counsel?
Good evening. For purposes of the record, my name's Peter Solino. I'm a lawyer here in Fall River at 550 Locust Street. I'm here to register an objection on behalf of a couple clients of mine that own businesses and real estate at 4 and 2 Lark Street in Fall River. The nature of my objection is the type of relief sought. I, as a lawyer, respectfully disagree with Attorney Parisi's characterization that he just needs a special permit. I'm going to direct the board's attention to the zoning use table, which specifically indicates that radio or television transmission stations, including towers related to said use, are allowed by special permit in a commercial mill district. I further direct the board's attention to the definition section of the bylaw, in which the term communication tower is defined. The definition of communication tower is as follows. A tower, antennas, cable, radio, electronic, and associated equipment used by FCC licensed carriers for purposes of transmitting and receiving voice and data via radio waves. It would be respectfully submitted to the board that what is being proposed is more akin to a communication tower, as the same as defined in the bylaw, as opposed to the use of a radio tower, which is allowed by special permit under the bylaw. And so I would submit to you that the application is improper because a variance should be sought inasmuch as the use as a communication tower is not allowed in any zoning district in the city of Fall River, let alone the commercial mill district. Further, I've done a slight bit of historical research, and I've found that there was a project on Quiksham Street that had an FCC licensed tower. It's located at 600 Quiksham Street, and the decision is dated March 20th, 1998, and that was done in front of this board by relief of a variance as opposed to a permit. I also was able to find a similar project on South Main Street that was also done by variance. And so with that, I'd respectfully submit to the board that I don't think that the requested relief is proper. I think that what should have been applied for was a variance, and I think that the petition should be withdrawn and refiled as a variance.
If I can add, in response to Attorney Parisi's assertion that he spoke with the building inspector or the zoning enforcement officer. I see the denial letters issued from a local building inspector, not the zoning enforcement officer, who is a different person.
I went to the building inspector, the zoning enforcement office, and asked them to issue the letter.
Right, but the local zoning enforcement, so they look at what's provided to them, and they give you a denial based upon, hey, I need a special permit, I need a denial. So that's what they give you. They don't make a determination upon what relief is required. That's not their job. That's your job as a professional to determine the kind of relief that is required. And again, I point out to, even if the special permit provision applies here, it does not eliminate the need for relief with regards to the height of the structure. So if you can build an 80-foot cell tower, maybe the special permit provision may apply. But I do have an issue with the application being probably, filed incorrectly. With the project itself, when I look at the face value of it, but actually, before we get to that, you pointed out tonight, and you mentioned in some of your submitted documents about the gap in service anywhere. And you showed some illustrations tonight that I don't think are provided in your submission. You do reference a number of cases where variances that were denied were overturned, reliant upon the gap in service. Many pages, in many cases, you reference. This is not a variance, so I think any of that case law is non-applicable to this petition. And you don't provide any information with regards to scientific fact illustrating a gap in coverage. So I just want the board to understand that. So the use is one thing. Now when we get to the actual case of what we're looking at, whether variance or special permit, I would think that it's very convenient to propose the location of this monopole tucked up in that northeast corner against the highway and against the street. Well, that's great for the owner of this property. If the tower were to fall, I think all of the abutting properties are more exposed than the property that's benefiting from it. So if you were to move this as a special permit and allow it at whatever height, I think the proposed pole location should be central to that lot, equidistant to all of the property lines, so that if it falls, it does not impede traffic on that highway, does not impede traffic on Estes Lane. It is a very convenient location, for the applicant, not necessarily for the neighborhood. I would also point out that this is directly adjacent to a single-family zoning district, both on the other side of the highway and on Estes Lane as well, coming out to Lark Street. So to say that this would have no detrimental effect on any of the abutting properties, that's a stretch. I mean, having to look at a 136-foot tower that does not exist now, I think every one of these abutters may have a concern with how that may affect them, or whether that would be detrimental to their use of their own land. So it's easy to say those things without providing proof that it would not be detrimental. again, I think you need to deal with or get past the fact, should this be a special permit or not, before you even consider the rest of the petition.
That was the original question that I had regarding the height. Seemed to fall under the purview where this needed to be a variance instead of a special permit.
I agree, but I'll step back if there's other people that want to.
I want to respectfully disagree with council's first statement that we don't require a special permit, because the use is clearly defined in the zoning bylaw. Radio transmission, this is radio transmission. Radio is a very broad term. It doesn't mean AM radio. It means use of the radio waves, which includes personal wireless service devices. And it says used by FCC licensed providers. This is being used by AT&T and FCC licensed providers.
But that's.
That you're
that's the
making my
defi-
argument.
You're mixing two things.
Yeah.
Communication towers is defined as what you're saying, FCC registered. Nowhere does the term communication towers show up in our table of uses.
Correct.
Right, but it's.
It's very specific to radio and television towers in association.
But this is a radio tower, that's what I'm saying. It is a
Okay.
radio tower.
So let's take the tower and the equipment attached to the tower as two separate things. Do you need a variance or a special permit to install that equipment at a height of 136 feet?
So have every antenna in the town been subject to a variance?
From what I can find, yes.
All the rooftops and stuff?
No. Attached to a building, you can do by a special permit. A construction of a tower, that's why I'm bifurcating what you're constructing. There's a tower and then there's the equipment. The equipment can be mounted similarly to what it was on maybe 2501, so I forget what the address is, but that was moved by a special permit at, I think, 47 meters, which fell on that building. That's why it wasn't 136 feet, or like the one near Quikasham Street that is 300 and something feet, required a variance. So I believe you'll find that any tower construction was done through the granting of variance, not a special permit. And I'm not saying that the case doesn't have merit with regards to a variance. It may clearly meet those requirements. Very particular to that would be, I would advise you, if you do decide to potentially withdraw this application and file a variance, please provide the proof of gap in service from not just an exhibit that you've prepared, but some scientific rationale or evidence by a professional that illustrates this gap in service so that we can hang our hat on that. I wouldn't want them to deny you having not have that information. Because on appeal, if that information wasn't provided at the time of the denial, I believe it would be thrown out until you were denied after providing that information during this process.
Like I said, the building inspector thought that we did
Not the
need-
zoning enforcement officer. Big difference. And the zoning enforcement officer and the local building inspector is not the zoning board of appeals. That's the purpose of this board.
I'd like to try to find the dimensional table, because I think there's an exemption for towers in the dimensional table. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I thought,
The dimensions, yeah, it's just these two.
See it. I looked.
no, it was somewhere else in the definition. I had looked at this, that's why. Because you're usually right, a lot of times there's height limits with respect to anything, but the,
They were defined.
Because I can't find it, and quite frankly, I agree with your requirement that I have the data. I probably didn't submit it with the original application. I would request that we continue this so that I could maybe amend the application if I require a variance, or we'll come back next week and push for a special permit next month.
On communications and public service, radio or television
Yeah, that's the one he
transmission
filed
stations,
under, that's,
including towers related said use.
right,
said
that's the one he
special
filed under.
permits.
Okay,
I'm confident that is the proper procedure. I'm not confident, based on the engineer's comments, that we don't require a height variance. But if I'm gonna apply for height variance, I might as well apply for a use variance, it doesn't matter.
Again, past practice of the board, I mean, if, I was hoping to find one that was constructed by a special permit, at least something to point us in the right direction, but I could not find one.
I'm not here to argue, I'm here to satisfy, so if I need to do more research, I'll do that and come back next month.
okay, there were a number of other people that were opposed. So are you asking to table the matter until the next meeting?
Actually, I'd love to hear comments from
Yeah,
the
I'd like
public,
to hear all the
because
comments.
if there are other issues, the engineer actually mentioned the tower, he used the word fall. And I mean, I can submit engineering support for this, but these towers are designed so that they don't topple over. They're designed so that they crumple onto themselves in an extreme situation. And what they're basically done is they're over-engineered at the bottom and regularly engineered at the top. So they have a designated like fold point. So you see towers like this along all up and down 24 and 195, and in great proximity to places like state highways, because those tend to be the most appropriate locations for these type of facilities. We moved it farther back on the property to get away from the closest abutter. The other abutters are other commercial uses, and they all got notified and didn't object.
Well, we don't know if they did yet.
Well, I'm here to object.
I understand, and I think he represents the individual who's the closest abutter on the other side, which would probably object to moving it closer to his property. So we were very conscious about that and moving it, so it's more than tower height setback from his property, and with no impact on the most significant abutting property, which is Interstate 24, so, or State Highway 24. So we were very conscious about that, and I can provide engineering support for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. There were other parties. Counsel, do you have anything?
No, I'll move, sorry.
There was another gentleman that's over here. Just state your name for the record, please.
My name is Hal Chico. I live at 83 Dickinson Street, and I've been there for 33 years, and all I need now is to have a view of that I never had before, because where my house is will be directly in front of this tower where he wants to put it. I'm about a quarter of a mile away, but still it's part of my view, and I went around at many signatures of few people opposed. Did you get that letter?
I did, and I submitted it.
Okay, so we're all opposing to it, and one, it's more of a residential area than it is commercial. The only
Okay,
two-
so you're, I'm sorry, Carlos
Pacheco.
Pacheco.
Yes.
83 Dickinson.
Correct.
And all of these
All the-
petitions in opposition, all of these came from you then? Okay.
Okay, so-
These will be made part of the record and going.
Okay, so that's why I'm here, and I'd like to keep my view the way it is. Don't need no obstruction, because that's where my living room is. I got a window there. All I want to see is a 136-foot tower, and never mind what else comes out of these towers without producing radiation. That's my opinion. And there's, like I said, it's more of a residential area. There's only like two businesses down there, which is Bisco and the alternative weatherization. Other than that, there's no other business there. And we've been fighting to get rid of those businesses out of down there because it's more of a residential area. All that we want to do is bring one of these
Well,
to,
this is zoned commercial mill district, so that is zoned a business.
yes, it has been, yes, I totally agree with that. But many of the businesses that were there, it's not well, I would say a mill business anymore. It's more of a construction business. And the other one's an insulation business, but Well,
Let's keep the focus to talking about a tower.
right, the tower
Start
is
running everybody
what
else
it
out.
is. No one wants to have this obstruction in front of us, whether on Lock Street, whether on Dickinson Street, and as far as Spencer Street, because it's all gonna be affecting all of us indirectly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is Mr. Pacheco also, he submitted 16, I believe, different names of abutters and addresses from all around the neighborhood. These will be made part of the record.
Nina, can you send all of this correspondence to Attorney Parisi tomorrow morning?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in objection? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Mark Rodricks. I'll be real quick because I'm actually here for something else on the list. But I'd be remiss if I don't mention that just to the right of the screen is Atlantis Charter School. And bringing a cell tower right next to a charter school, it's within about 1,000 feet, at best I could tell. And I think that's something that we should keep in mind. I have a daughter that's in kindergarten at Atlantis, so I wanted to just mention that and, get the distance and see if there's anything that prevents it from being close to a school, just with the health concerns regarding cell towers.
What was your name and address again?
Sure, Mark Rodricks, and my address is 161 Rathgar Street. That's it, just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Is there anyone else opposed? We also received a letter from a resident of Lark Street, Tim Cabral, to Lark Street, Fall River. Dear honorable members of the board, I am writing to you today in opposition of the proposal to construct a cell phone tower on Estes Lane. The idea that anyone would consider the proposal before you today a good plan for the city, and more specifically for the residents that abut the proposed site of the above-mentioned project, is concerning. The proposed site sits on a commercial parcel, but one that directly abuts a residential neighborhood that is known for its suburban characteristics. While there are a few commercial buildings that occupy space adjacent to the proposed site, these businesses operate in reasonable ventures that should, with care and respect for the neighborhood. A nearly 140-foot tall cell tower is located in this location is nothing more than an attempt to an attempt at recurring income for the landlord, with zero regard for how it will affect any quality of life for those that would have to go through the construction process. And it goes on talking more about that, and that this will be made part of the record. I support businesses, and I want the Fall River business to succeed. I respectfully ask that you vote in opposition and grant the special license permit and not allow this project to go forward. Please do not support this. Best regards, Tim Cabral. So that is the only letters that we received. I don't know if there's anything else. I didn't get anything else. Is there anyone else here?
I want to add one other thing. In Attorney Parisi's narrative on page 7, he references the proposed facility is on a large, substantially undeveloped parcel and provides a substantial vegetative buffer. Can you please add to your site plan what you're considering a substantial vegetative buffer?
We're looking at the site right here. There's
So-
I understand, I'm not
Well,
proposing
maybe-
any landscaping.
Maybe a buffer to the highway?
Yeah, there's.
But
well,
how
there's-
about to the rest of the neighborhood?
There's also vegetation here. The residential neighborhood is separated from this is the commercial industrial zone back
Yep.
in here, and then there's a vacant lot that's undeveloped with trees. So our lot is.
Yeah, so
there's
just
a-
label it on the plan, because that exhibit wasn't part of your
Understood.
your submission, so label it on the plan, what's vegetated, what's not. And what's substantially undeveloped parcel, because I thought the parcel was fairly developed, the existing parcel.
It has a building on it, but it's.
Some parking area, some gravel, developed. Okay. Thanks. I have nothing else, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Vice Chairman.
So the request is to
Well, that's
table.
the question, yeah. Are you requesting to table to the next meeting?
Yeah,
Or
that's correct.
oh, sorry, I thought he was raising his hand. He's pointing. I saw this, sorry. You're requesting a table?
Mr. Chairman, I move for clarification purposes that the petitioner be permitted to table the petition until our next regularly scheduled meeting. Is that enough time?
I believe so, yes.
We can table it for longer, can't we?
Yeah, you can table it to whatever date certain you choose.
Yeah.
I'll know by tomorrow whether or not I have to amend the application, and I'll throw in an amendment with Nina, and I think we have time to advertise it for the next meeting.
You still have time to advertise if it needs to be amended?
Yes.
Okay, 'cause when was the deadline for next meeting?
Deadline was
14th?
last week, but
So
the
when are those ads?
advertising doesn't have to be out until next week.
Next week, okay.
I'll get you something tomorrow, Monday, the latest.
And there is a fee for table.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. We'll start. John is on this one, yes. So start, John Silver.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Rick Sahadi.
Yes.
Dan Dupree.
Yes.
Jim Calkins.
Yes.
John Frank, yes. Mr. Kelly.
Nope, that's it, you got your 5, he's not voting.
Oh, they're not voting, that's right.
Thank you.
Took a recess? You've been out there for a while?
Yeah.
Short recess.
No problem.
I guess we could, I don't know, push this thing out.
Sorry about that, left my materials behind. Item number 4, 164 Elm Street LLC, care of Attorney Mark L. Levin. Subject property is 164 Elm Street, map N10, lot 43. The applicant seeks a variance to convert an existing 4-unit structure into 8-unit residential building with 2 apartments on each floor, 4 floors, waiving front yard setbacks. Additionally, the applicant seeks a special permit to waive parking requirements. The property is located in a B1 local business zoning district and an AOD arts overlay district. Attorney Levin, good to see you.
Good to see you, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the planner's squad, Mr. Engineer, and Madam Clerk. For the record, Attorney Mark L. Levin, 138 Rock Street, Fall River, Massachusetts. I'm here tonight representing the 164 Elm Street LLC in this request to convert an existing building that goes back over a century. My client initially purchased this property before he put it in the LLC. He bought it back in February of 2021. At that time, when he bought the property, he did not realize that the assessor had a record that this was a 4-unit building because the property was actually used for 6 families. There had been 18 bedrooms and 6 units within this building. Now, you look at the building, it's an extremely large building. This is an area where this revitalization of downtown is happening, where you're having much more of these older buildings being converted for uses that can be used today with modern requirements. When my client first looked at the project, he was planning to vacate the tenants and make renovations within the building that would bring it up to code. As he went through the requirements of code, he realized that it didn't have the requirements that met the building code requirements, didn't have fire code requirements, didn't have energy code requirements, and essentially was a building that should probably not have been inhabited at the time he bought it, but he bought it from someone else. It was. So, not realizing at the first time that this was assessed as a 4-family unit, he thought it was a 6, and started going through and tearing out the building because it really was in bad shape. As you see, and you can see by pictures if you look at it, it's an extremely large building. It is its own hardship on its own property because there's not much you could do with the property. It only afforded a driveway on the left-hand side of the property that led to a few parking spaces in the back, and you'd have to piggyback to get them in and out. What my client now has done, and again, this is an old building unique to this district, and basically a historical building if you look at it. It's where the Bank Street Armory is. It's near the old school that's being converted over to arts and sciences and apartments upstairs. He wants to basically restructure the interior. He's not going to do exterior work on the property, but put levels of floors in there so that there'll be 4 floors. On each floor, he'll have 2 bedrooms. He basically going to increase the occupancy by 6 extra bedrooms. The uniqueness of this stuff is that the building itself is structurally sound, so it's not like you would want to tear down the building. You want to revitalize this neighborhood, and that's what the AOD district has provided for you. And apart from this significance, because of that, there is a case, Johnson Board versus the Board of Appeals of Wareham, which is a 1972 case that says when you have an older building, you try to revitalize that building, and itself becomes a hardship because of its condition on the property. Now, not only is this just going to be for the code provisions, but again, there was a lot of lead paint in this property. It needed to be taken down, and that's what finally got my client to understand that this project was not just a simple cosmetic project within the property that he could just paint, fix up, put some lighting in, and rent it again. He actually had to remove the wall lights that were in there because of the lead paint and to require the code provisions to change. He's completely removed everything from inside, the plumbing, the electrical, the walls. It just decks right now, and he wants to renovate that so you'll have 2 apartments on each floor. Now, again, because it is economically infeasible to take this building down and replace it, this becomes its hardship itself. And I provided you some of the case laws that are in there that provide that this locus being revitalized and reused is itself its own hardship because of the extensive changes that need to be done in this thing. Now, this will present a market rate apartment complex when he's done. It'll be good for this neighborhood. It's not going to derogate from this neighborhood because that's what this neighborhood is changing. You've have the Bank Street Armory that's going to be changed over to residential. You have the old college that's almost complete for rental for residential. And what my client's also providing that isn't here now is as much necessary parking as he can provide. Yeah, again, he's restricted by the area. Had he had a larger area, I wouldn't have to come for you for any of the numbers of units because the AOD district allows so much more units within this district. But my client, what he has now is a one-way in and one-way out. As you see in the design, what he's doing is he's getting a curb cut on the right-hand side of the property. He's going to create a couple spaces as you come into it, but this will have access to create 8 parking spaces in the back where he'll pave and add the additional areas for striping for these, and you'll be able to come in one way in and go around the building and come out. Right now, there isn't this, and as it existed, it probably was more of a hazard not to have some one way in and out for the number of people that have this. Now, by providing this Although we don't have all the spaces that we would like to have, we are now providing a much better access for emergency uses in vehicles and the ability of these people to get out of the property if they really had to. I think if you look at this and you're trying to look at the neighborhood and the homogeneous necessary needs to this neighborhood and to bring vitalization downtown, which is the big point of the AOD district, you find this property is probably going to enhance the vitality of the central business area, bringing people down here who will go to the local stores, who go to the local restaurants, and they'll have good access down to the T once it opens next year. I think that's about all I have to present. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so it was on the books as a legal four unit, operated as a 6. It's obvious he's done an extensive amount of work thus far. I mean, we're looking at a shell right now.
That's correct.
So
It had to be done.
I understand, but to say that architecturally this unique feature is going to come back would probably be a stretch.
Well, but it's its own feature itself, and it's an old building. So he's not really doing exterior work to it, it's all within the building itself. It's self-contained, and all we're doing is adding a few more bedrooms that was there already.
So we're talking a total of 24 bedrooms now,
Correct.
and we're talking, how many parking spaces?
There were 10.
10.
There were only 3 before.
I'm seeing 7.
There's 2 on
Oh,
the
I'm
side,
sorry,
yeah.
on the drive itself.
Yeah.
This is gonna be 8 3-bedrooms?
Yes.
That's what it says.
I think you said, 8 3-bedroom units?
I thought it was
Yeah,
8
two
twos.
two units on each floor.
But 3 bedrooms in each of the units?
3 bedrooms is
So
what.
technically now, by the assessor's office, it says there's 13 bedrooms in the house.
We understand that, but physically, when he bought it, they
Well,
were.
that's all gone, you have no proof of that.
I understand.
Yeah.
My client found this out with the building inspector much later, and to
Mark,
his surprise.
Why didn't you move this as a special permit in the Arts Overlay District, rather than seek a variance? You would not have needed to show hardship for the creation of a multifamily building in the Arts Overlay District.
Felt that because we had the lack of area.
In a specific case, the zoning board of appeals shall, after a public hearing, grant a special permit to waive lot areas, height, lot coverage, percentage, yard requirements for multifamily developments as cited in this code. Unless the opinion of the zoning board of appeals, such a waiver would be detrimental to the area and not in the best interest of the city. Those are the development and redevelopment standards 86-376 under the Arts Overlay District.
All right. I mean, I did apply for both.
Or you
very
apply for a
exa-
special permit for parking.
Yeah, for parking.
I'm just saying you may want to amend it, and it's a much easier lift for this board with no hardship being required. But I don't know,
So that would be fine. That probably is a smarter way to do that.
As it stands, it's 6 spaces short.
Yes.
yeah, you
Yes.
wouldn't,
You have 10,
you would need
16,
16.
6, okay.
Right.
And you said, so I'm not clear on the unit size, is it, they're 2-bedroom units or?
They're gonna be 3 bedrooms, but two apartments on a floor. So
So it's
it's
4 stories?
It's a four-story
It seems like it's 3,
within the
but
building, yeah, it's 4 levels.
the basement?
That's
It's gotta
The
be.
basement's not a basement, it's 1 level, it's ground level,
Oh, it is.
yeah. It has its own walkway out in the back.
Garage, yeah, it's a garage door there.
Yeah, but that's ground level.
I
Yeah,
guess,
that's gone. I'm surprised it's 4-story. I didn't realize
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, otherwise he wouldn't have
Well, I
done
mean-
if he couldn't.
So the 4-story would include the attic of what was the original house that's buried under there someplace?
Yes.
So is he changing that roof line up from a pitched
No.
roof line to it?
Roof line's gonna stay the same.
So the two.
Within the
top-
building.
If you look at the
Right,
the
you're not
street view
changing
of it,
roof.
Yeah.
would there be basement
This-
units, like garden basements that are half buried? Is that where you get 2 units? I was looking at a street view picture of it. I don't know if Chris can bring up the street view on Google Earth. I just don't see it being a 4-story
I
building.
mean, either, that's what I was trying to figure, but I hear it looks like there's a garage door in the old view.
Right, so it might be like a basement, like half units in the
That
basement?
basement is above grade, so I believe that's what council is saying is an additional story.
Okay.
However, the first floor, the basement level, was where there was never the additional 2 units. So that fourth story, that story up there,
Yep.
is where the 2 units were.
Okay, but so where the garage door you see in the front?
There was never any units
There were no units there, so that's
No,
where you'll be
sir.
adding to?
So that's where I would
Okay,
be adding
all
the
right.
2 units. And,
And building code wise, like for light, I know you're gonna deal with that stuff later, but no issues with creating livable space in that
No,
lower
sir.
area?
No, sir. And just for the record, initially, when I purchased this property, I did reach out to the city officials, to the building department, and
Yeah.
ask them to come do a walkthrough
Okay.
inspection with me, because I know there is some law that, if these units existed X amount of years ago, they could be grandfathered in.
Well, grandfather for fire protection, theoretically, yeah, maybe. Not the zone.
And at the time, the inspectors didn't feel comfortable even walking the property.
Okay.
When I purchased the property in '21, my full intent was to go in there and renovate this property.
Yep.
I got activated on military orders and was gone, so that's why there's such a gap to where we are today.
Gotcha.
Um,
Well, thank you for your service.
If I can ask, thank you
Yes,
for your
sir.
service, brother.
That's not why I mentioned it. I
No,
just
but
wanted
that's-
you guys to be like, well, why was there
That's
2
very
years
important.
gap?
Was it occupied when you purchased it? Were there
Yes, sir.
residents in the building?
Yes, sir. And that's also part of the reason why I didn't understand the extent of disrepair of the building. Because there were tenants in place and we were not allowed to walk the property. And I don't want to say I was naive, but, I'm a general contractor on the side. That's not my primary occupation. I'm a firefighter, I'm in the military, but also I'm a general contractor. My mother's family lives in Little Compton, Rhode Island. So I thought I had this bright idea of going into this building, renovate it, and get some supplemental income so that I could help pay for my mother to live there. That went completely 360 when I found out that this building's an absolute disaster. So when I got home and wanted to proceed with work, I did reach out to the building inspectors,
Yeah.
was 110% transparent, was never trying to pull any tricks or anything like that. And I had the discussion several times with Eugene, Frank, and ultimately Glenn, and I said, hey, look, I need to get this thing rolling. Can I start building from within? And what we did was, we put new floor systems in the building. And then we framed, sistered the exterior walls and kept going up. So like those dormers and stuff like that, I never went higher than the existing peak, but instead of having cut up nasty, ugly looking dormers, I just went up with a rectangular building and a flat rubber roof,
Right.
to maximize that top
that top
story.
And that's what I was
So there were
asking
some
about.
exterior renovations then to the building?
Uh, yes,
Okay.
yes, yep, correct.
All right, so the peaked roofs on either side, the remnants of the 19th century building, those peaked roofs are going away, the slope roofs.
Yes,
And
those
you're
are,
going
no,
up, you're
they're
going
already, they're already gone.
four-store, I figured as much when I was out there the other day.
Yes, sir. And from my understanding, that was approved on the building permit application
They
that
have
I
the ability to
submitted.
approve that, sure.
So, yeah, I didn't know that there would be an issue with that, because I did submit for a building permit to essentially do 4 units, but they're gonna be bi-level units, so 2 stories each unit. Obviously, worst case scenario, that's what it's gonna be, but realistically, money-wise, that isn't feasible at all.
Yeah, but the parking becomes a concern in the area, going to that many units, especially that many bedrooms.
Yes, sir.
Because then, it's gonna be downtown, short distance to the rail station. You may have, 2 adults living in each apartment or more that are gonna be, moving down to the train or working within the city, that type of thing. And that's, obviously, you've got parking for the old academy, you've got parking for different businesses. You're not gonna be able to utilize that, and on-street here is pretty bad.
It's pretty tight already.
So-
Because of the development that's already.
Except for the front of the Vogue, which is metered, if I'm not mistaken.
What was in those, what was in that garage door? Before, like before you did anything?
Just like utility, yeah, it was just a basement, like the chimneys.
But it has a garage door, like people, you couldn't drive in it?
I
No,
don't
it's
think
pretty
so.
low, Dan.
No.
No, I don't, I'm just looking at the picture, so I don't.
Yeah, I don't think there's no way you could drive in there, no.
So the request, and I asked this before, is it's 8 threes?
Yes,
3
sir.
bedrooms?
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
I fit them in that house.
That's density.
Well, like I said, there was 18 bedrooms before, so
Yeah, so we've already done rough framing and some of the units, right? Because we submitted the building permit application as a 4-unit building. So I understand the square foot, but if you guys actually walk the property, the units that are rough framed with 3 bedrooms, they're actually really nice. Like I even said the same thing, wow, that's kind of tight, like when the architect
Well,
came
no,
up with
it's the
the
parking,
design.
it's the parking that comes
Yeah, it's not
associated with the
the-
3-bedroom unit
Okay.
as they concern.
Yes, sir.
And a number of bedrooms usually relates to the number of parking spaces you're gonna need.
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, that's a tough spot. Going back to Dan's point, we could be looking at this as a special permit only.
Simplifies a lot. It simplifies a lot.
It simplifies a lot.
I think,
Because, you know,
See
I
what the
mean,
audience has to
Yeah.
working with, you know, the hardship is the building itself, I get that.
well, as the renovate, I mean,
It's good.
I
No,
cited the cases for you so you'd have them, but, so I think I do have the hardship, but that's all right. Maybe it's a way to step back and,
Would that take a re-notification
Yes.
if we were to change the application?
Yeah, that'd be a new advertisement, but
Yep.
sometimes if it's going the other way, you know, again, it's for grounds for an appeal, you wanna make sure that it was advertised correctly and the
Yep.
butter notifications
Yep.
were done correctly. But let's see what the audience has to say before you guys decide one way or the other.
Mr. Levin, do you want to chat with your client before
Sure.
we commit to anything?
You wanna see what, anybody in favor or opposed before?
Yeah, that'd be a good
So at
idea.
least they can understand what the.
Any other
opposition
questions
might
from the board at this point? Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Sir, step forward. Identify yourself with your address, please.
I'm Alan McEnroe, 1 Hope Street, Westport, Massachusetts. I'm here as developer and owner of the property across the street, the Creative Class. 55 apartments and 3 current businesses, retail businesses. I commend the developer for taking on this project. It was an eyesore in the neighborhood. It's nice to see something done. Parking is something that we wrestle with every day. We purchased 2 ancillary lots that weren't part of the Creative Class, and we've gone out and found other sources for parking. So to say that we're going to be able to absorb 8 3-bedrooms worth of parking on Elm Street, especially with taking a curb cut out of it, is, I just don't see it as being feasible. There's a lot of other activity to be looked at in downtown Fall River, and I think the biggest concern that everyone will have is the amount of parking that's available. There's a lot of commercial buildings that are being evaluated to be turned into residential units, and I think it's a delicate balance for the Board of Appeals here on how you grant this. One of the concerns I have is the amount of perimeter that's been added to this particular project. For instance, in the back there, does that footprint include the cantilevered 4 stories out over the parking area?
Yes, sir.
It does? Okay, when I was down there, it looked like that was the porch, and then you have about a 12-foot extension cantilevered out over the porch, from the porch?
So the cantilever portion that you're talking about is in the back rear of the property?
Yes.
Yes, that is the cantilever section that you're talking about.
Okay, visually, it just looks different from there.
Okay.
But when I look at this, I just don't see how you're going to be able to access two of the spots that are right there, where you have, what, an 11-foot clearance to get into it. I don't know how you would pull into a space with an 11-foot aisle. So basically, you kind of have less than 8 spaces.
Which one is the?
Well, if you look at where the porch is in the back, at the northeast corner, right
sir.
there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, show me how you back out of that particular spot right there.
I don't know how I would show you that, but I would imagine that you would just swing to your right if you were backing out, and then
If
pull
there's
straight
if there's a
forward.
car on each side, I don't think that's feasible. I just,
Normally, the required aisle width for pulling into a 90-degree space like that would be 20 feet.
okay.
Yeah. This
Or
is
22 is preferred.
11.5.
So,
So
you know,
it's tight, but they are asking for that to be waived,
I understand.
yeah, through the special permit part.
But I'm bringing to the board's attention, it's not 10 spaces. It's something less than 10 spaces. So with that, I'm all for 4 apartments in here on however they want to be put in. To put 24 bedrooms in one area with limited parking is, I don't know, a challenge. And I think the applicant should do what's in the Arts Overlay District and look for contractual parking elsewhere.
Yeah.
That,
So again, Mark, under 86-376, Section E, your parking can be provided in a number of different ways. It can be on-site, but not located between the street and the front of the building, off-site by contract in public or private off-street parking facilities, and parking may be covered or uncovered. So I'm sure Mr. McInver has secured all of the available parking in the neighborhood to support his project. So I don't know if you could find any in close proximity, but that's a problem.
I will offer that I think the board should consider the counter-cyclical nature of parking with businesses and residences. And there are businesses in that particular area that I have not approached. I don't know what would it be.
Okay.
Okay?
I mean, maybe and understand, we've had a number of applications before the board for downtown locations and parking. And they've all gone out, contracted for parking, figured it out. You know, I'm doing it for an office for my company up in Jamaica Plain right now, that we just don't have on-street parking. And we finally found somebody that's, you know, gonna take, the 5 cars that we have. So, that's, Fall River's growing up, and we're realizing that we need more residential space, which, therefore I agree with, what you're doing, what you're proposing. But we got developers in here for 30-unit buildings and bigger in some cases that have had to go hunting for parking. Case in point. And I agree that there is the cycle of business, not business, but there really aren't that many parking businesses immediately adjacent. I mean, and maybe you've not talked to them all, but some of those businesses don't have parking either.
I'm just
I know,
offering
I
as a
know, and
solution. I think as a developer, I've wrestled with the same thing that this gentleman is wrestling with. And
I appreciate it.
I don't want to stop the project, I just want it to be done so that it's going to be an asset to the neighborhood.
And I think, the bedroom count is a big deal. So if there were 2s, then a waiver of spaces may be a little bit more appropriate. Normally, to get down to 1-to-1, they're usually 1 bedrooms or some 2s, like a mix of that. But to go to all 3s, and only provide 8 spaces, I can't see where that's been done in this area.
Yeah, and you can, just as a suggestion, I'm not an engineer, I didn't sleep in the Holiday Inn last night, but, even maybe looking at diagonal spaces across the back, because at least that gives you a little bit more in your passageway around, so people are pulling in at an angle, backing out at the same angle, and driving out. It's an idea, it's, I think what you're hearing here is this may need to be rethought. as for number of bedrooms, maybe number of units, you know, we'll leave that up to your discretion. We gotta soften the blow on the parking somehow.
Okay.
That's my biggest thing. I mean,
I agree.
cool.
I think, let me just ask a question.
Go ahead. By the way, the building's looking great.
Thank you very much.
It's nice to finally see something happening with it. That's a good thing.
The whole neighborhood seems to be activating, it's nice.
Yeah, it's wild. It's really great. Good stuff.
Gonna give it a shot? Thank you, John.
Yeah, no problem.
I think what we'll do is we'll ask if the board will let us table this until the June meeting, because we'll probably modify our application, and that would require an advertisement. We're not gonna have that done, and my client's gonna talk to his neighbor, who is behind him, that owns the lot next door, to see if any of that space is available. Because right now it's vacant, they use some of it, but I don't know how much they use. So that's the only, I don't know if you've ever talked to them.
I have not, no.
Okay. So that might be an opportunity to contract, but obviously.
He's on his way there right now, guys.
He's gonna get it fresh and then so listen to you.
Tomorrow.
So we're.
After the meeting, if you want to talk, I can tell you what might be available.
Oh, okay, thanks, Oliver. All right, he has some ideas too.
So my question then is, if we table, but it's gonna be a new application and a re-advertisement, should we withdraw without prejudice? Which I think is the neater way to do it.
That's fine, right?
It just, the only issue with that, he would lose the filing fee, which is substantial on a multi-unit building. So I would hate to see that happen.
Yeah,
but,
that's a big one.
I guess we could, time-wise, I think it does the same thing, but if you want to make it cleaner, I don't have a problem with giving credit to the already fee that was paid, and then just pay the difference in the special permit fee. If you guys vote that to be the case, I think that would be appropriate.
We've
Have
got
to pay the
an
advertising fee and the
unnecessary
butter
variance fee at
notification.
this point, so.
So it would be the same cost whether we table or.
No, no. Well, yeah,
Because
we're gonna make it that way.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you will allow that.
To make it cleaner legal-wise, yes, we can make the
Mr. Chairman, I
accommodation.
move that we
He
give
has to
the leave to
request.
withdraw.
He has to
Yes, to
request.
Oh, I thought he
Yes,
did.
so we're gonna ask that the board allow us to withdraw. We're also gonna ask that the board allow us to apply the application fee to the extent that there's a difference in the new application to the current application.
I think it's $50 difference, I think,
Right.
so, I think, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we grant the petitioner's request to table.
Second.
Or to withdraw the petition
Withdraw
without prejudice.
Please
Second.
make- yeah.
And apply the
Second.
difference to sequential applications, subsequent applications.
That should suffice. Second holds. Okay, any discussion on the motion? John Frank?
Yes.
Jim Calkins? Dan DePere?
Yes.
Ricky Sahadi?
Yes.
And Chairman Pereira, yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for your help. Developer's a developer, I like it. All righty. Number 5, Maria Fatima Silva, care of Attorney Mark L. Levin. Subject property is 153 Rathgar Street, map P08, lot 71. The applicant seeks a variance to divide the parcel into 2 lots containing one pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling and another containing a proposed single-family dwelling, waiving area frontage and side yard setbacks for both lots and front yard setbacks for the lot with the pre-existing dwelling. The property is located in S Single-Family Zoning District. Also,
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Attorney Mark L. Levin, 138 Rock Street, Fall River, Massachusetts, representing Maria Fatima Silva. The property itself is located in an S district. It had been located in a G district, and subsequent to my client's purchase, these parcels were in the G district, containing approximately 5,000 square feet of land. If you look at the plan that we provided, you will see that many of the single-family homes that are abutting and around that area are all on the similar size that we're asking the board to allow the division of the property so that it will allow another home to be built. My guess, and without information, because this was an existing house when my client bought it, is that the house, as you see it, is pretty well set to the east, I guess, of the property. And with that, I believe someone probably bought the 2 lots so that they would have an additional lot at some time to develop it. So my client's asking you now to say that, you know, you're looking at a character of the neighborhood where many of these are similar size and had been designed at the time when the property was in a G district, and unfortunately, due to the law of merger, the 2 lots merge and can no longer be separated or built upon. So we're asking you to allow the ability of the owner to utilize all the property instead of having this large lot that they really don't use. Like I said, if you cut that down, they're gonna use the east side of the property that they're using now. The rest of it is just vacant land. So we're asking to allow the character of the neighborhood to remain single family, and also allow it to have another house lot on it than doing something else to make it a duplex or something. Thank you.
so one question comes up right off the bat, is that unless I was in front of the wrong 153, there's 2 mailboxes and 2 meters on that house.
My client's using a single, that's all I know.
And the property card says, property card says single.
That I have no idea.
So we have a lot currently that doesn't qualify by itself as a single-family lot were it to be built upon new for dimensions, area, et cetera, and you're asking us to break it into 2 substandard lots. So we have a substandard lot that we would turn into 2 substandard lots.
That's correct. He's trying to use the original 2 lots that are on his deed to build that, and Again, my guess is at one point, people were buying these things and then selling off pieces, but once the zoning changed to S, it merged and it no longer could be used that way.
Any questions or comments from the board on this? Dan, talk to us from the planning's perspective, please.
When I look at the plan, in the application, I don't see a request for lot coverage relief. On the plan, it references lot coverage relief, but then it also provides a coverage calculation, basically stating that existing buildings, garage, asphalt, and concrete, 8456 square feet, 100% coverage. This lot exceeds 10,000 square feet, so I don't know where they can calculate that 100% lot coverage, or that request was even listed in the petition. It's pre-existing non-conforming lots due to merger, so the fact that it doesn't meet the S district probably helps the argument a little bit, but I would offer that you would need to decide, would subdividing this make, would they make the lots more non-conforming? So the lot coverage issue, a 2.8 foot side yard setback is not something that you guys normally entertain. Some of the lots in the area are around, let's see, one on this plan, 4989. So there's a couple of abutting lots that are single families, that 5400, 5108. So then, I don't think you'll find a conforming lot in the neighborhood. So you can give that some thought. They show no provisions for parking or how that would play into the lot coverage issue. Again, I keep getting site plan reviews that come in and they don't handle all of the relief needed to construct what's needed to be in compliance with zoning by those items not being covered when it comes before you, and it makes them have to come back again for other relief. With regards to if you feel that the home is being used as a two-family structure, you can make it part of this provision that it be converted back to a single.
Yeah, like I said, it wasn't an empty meter socket. There were 2 meters, live meters on the side of the house, so, and 2 mailboxes. So that kind of tells me it's a two-family house right now. Whether it's legal or not is another question. So.
Is it a single story or is it 2 stories?
It's
No,
2
got a
story.
second floor.
It's 2-story wood frame.
I mean, it's not a gigantic structure.
No, early last century, I'm sure it was built
But you
as
can
a
make it a
single
condition
family.
that an affidavit be recorded that it's a single, and at an inspection of the assessor's department and the building inspector to confirm that it is, and it has to remain that. You know,
Right.
so you, if you honestly think that that's the case.
Yeah,
That's all I can
I would
offer.
want some assurance on that. I think that's owed the city.
Well, that would be agreeable. I mean, I agree with you. For what my client tells me, they're just using it for themselves. And I know there would be parking, he understood that, although I do see they didn't put it on the plan.
So
It
where
was
would,
intended to be 2 off-street parking per unit.
per
building.
Per building, okay.
A lot coverage he had provided to me that he didn't, so I didn't ask for it because.
He wrote it on his plan. On the plan, it asks for a waiver of lot coverage.
Oh,
But in
and
the
I didn't
application,
get
it
that.
does not. But then even on the plan, when it provides the calculation, halfway down the plan, it references 8456 square feet, divided by 8456 square feet equals 100% lot coverage,
Right.
giving the presentation to the board that this lot is entirely impervious right now, and it's not.
Well, it isn't.
So
No,
it
it's
should be
grassed.
8456 if that is the existing lot coverage divided by the lot area, which is
Yeah.
probably, so that calculation needs to be straightened out. If you're going to hang your hat on not increasing the existing lot coverage. On the aerial, I can't tell how much of it's parking now or driveway or.
Well, what's
where they would
interesting, going by there the other day, there is no driveway. There is a curb cut that's in the area between the
Curb cut
two
with
houses,
gravel.
and somebody was parked on the grass between the two houses.
Okay, so.
Or
so-
not two
So
houses,
the lot's
the two
clearly
lots.
not 100% lot coverage, or
No.
8,456 square feet of coverage.
No,
So I think that
there's-
needs to be resolved.
There's grass there, et cetera. That figure is bad. I'm just thinking out loud, yes, it would still end up somewhat conforming with the balance of the neighborhood. I have a hard time turning a non-conforming lot into two non-conforming lots.
Well, the side yard setback's tough.
And side yard setback's a killer on that one. 2.8
They try to
feet.
maximize as much as they could to keep the lots
No,
as
I
close.
understand.
Yeah.
They were trying to keep the
Square footage.
square footage somewhat balanced, et cetera, but, you know, the next guy comes in, buys the house next door, puts up a stockade fence, now you can't even, get down between the fence and the house for
I mean, is it-
maintenance
is it worth
purposes.
them cleaning up the plan and coming back, or would the lot coverage thing not really affect your decision? You gotta
Well, I mean,
decide.
I'm one guy, so that's why I'd like to hear some opinion from my peers here, as far as how people feel about that type of division.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
That aside, we're just looking at the property, and you see the 2 meters that you're talking about. Somehow we have to come to terms with that. That has to be resolved somehow.
Yep, you did take pictures, you doubled it. What'd you get on the street view?
That's on Google Maps.
Yeah, that's exactly it, so I got the funny feeling it's first and second floor, thank you for that clarification.
So,
'Cause I
yeah,
didn't
somehow
photograph it the
we've
other
got to
day.
come to terms with that.
Well, we can, I mean, they're gonna have to agree to use it as a single family, and file an affidavit the same.
Ordinance.
Is there anybody here to speak in favor of this application? Anybody to speak in opposition? Okay, I'll take, you're blocking the aisle, so I'll take the big guy first. Here we go. Just please state your name
Doesn't
and
your daughter
address.
go to Atlantis?
I was gonna say, hi again, everyone. I'm Mark Rodricks, 161 Rathgar Street in Fall River, Mass. I am one house over from 153. The big thing that I'll talk about is parking and congestion in that area. You guys are right, the 153 currently, there is a curb cut out and there's a small patch of dirt that they park on. One car does, but looking at the plans here, I don't imagine they'd be able to continue to use that because the other parcel would be going into that as well. There's not a lot of parking to begin with on that street. If you throw another house in there, it's going to be real tight. We had a small family get together at Christmas, and there was source of tension between us and the neighbors already. That are at 153 now. So I would say the parking is a big issue. Additionally, when we first moved in, there was a gentleman that lived across the street. He recently sold his house. But he said that the first day that I met him, the first thing that he said is, they tried to split that parcel into two before, but we fought them on it. So I'm not sure. I didn't really know of a way to look into past issues, but perhaps the zoning board could look and see if this has been requested before. Certainly, I'm not familiar with the S and the G grouping, but this was before the date that you're talking about. So even in the past setup, they tried to split it, and that wasn't allowed. So I just thought I'd mention that as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Anyone else to speak in opposition? Gentleman in white sweater.
Hello, Board. Justin Brown of 164 Rathgar Street. Just made a couple notes. The most obvious thing is space. I mean, if you drove by this property, they make this look pretty even, but it's no more than a backyard where they're trying to put this house. It's a nice piece of land, but I see no way that you could, if there was a house there, you'd think, wow, that's really tight. Parking will definitely be an issue. The current resident of that house has no less than 3 cars there at all times, and often 4 cars, and that already spans the length of the curbing on the property. Second, there is an aesthetic to the neighborhood. where every house is 70 years plus old. Putting a new structure there or a new house would definitely disrupt that. And like Mark mentioned, this did come up before. Jeremy is my neighbor, or was my neighbor before I sold the house, and he mentioned this as soon as the property was sold. He said, "I bet they're going to try to split that." And here we are, 5 or 6 years later, and they're trying to split it. And like I said, if you drove by that, it doesn't pass the eye test on where you'd put a house. So with that, thank you.
Thank you for the input.
Do any of the neighbors know is it being used as a multifamily, or has it ever, as a two-family?
I don't think it's currently
No?
being used as a multifamily.
Thank you.
There are 2 adults that live there, but they seem to
They
be
live together,
comfortable.
okay.
Lady in the back row.
My name is Elizabeth Steen, and I live in the home on Primrose Street, which is to the south of 153, the existing home, existing structure. My entire life, this entire thing has only been one family, one person owned, okay? There is not enough room to the east of the existing structure, which would be by your home, to the west, where you could put a driveway. The other driveway would be absorbed by the lot that they want to develop, okay, or a portion of it, because there's a space where they do pull off now to park by the west side of their house.
Right.
But if you take that parcel for a home, you're kind of taking away any advantage of off-street parking. There's no room for parking on these streets at all. Come wintertime, they've all got to park on the north side, so the plows can get through, and that becomes another issue, as most of Fall River is anyways. I think right now, if you were to put a home in there, not only would parking be an issue, but you also have the noise element. And as you know, that every day you go out in the summertime, you have lawnmowers, weed whackers, chainsaws, nail guns, whatever you want to hear for a motor is going. And it goes 7 days a week, up until 9 o'clock at night. So I think if you added another home in there, I'm not talking about human noise, but I'm talking about static noise so that they can keep their yard mowed, whatever, I don't know. I think that is just going to add to the congestion of, there's already a lot of loss of, I've lived there for 70 years, so I know that there's a lot of loss of privacy. And I get that, people, you know, we are a growing city and everybody's kind of developing into each other, but when you still add houses on top of houses, you kind of like take away from a person's way of life that they've always had. So that's kind of and right now I would say it is a single family. You see 2 mailboxes, but I think one of those belongs to the owner and one belongs to the tenant.
Okay.
Okay?
We'll still need to clarify that.
Yes.
But thank you for the input.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One's a house
Hmm?
meeting. One's a house meeting.
It could be, but it's not that big a property. That would be very unusual unless it's running the washer and dryer or something and they're charging separately, that type of thing. Regardless, it's giving the wrong impression. Attorney Levin, we got a bunch of issues. Was there anybody else to speak in opposition? Sir, I'm sorry.
My name is Justin Pacheco. I live at 181 Rathgar Street. Like the neighbors before me, I have, similar concerns. It's also, I've owned that property going on 6 years, and that lot has been empty till recently, and parking was an issue before, the building became occupied. It's also, we have a one-way on Charlotte, which they put in that bike path that nobody uses, which limits parking on the other side of my lot, which really leaves just Rathgar Street. We're also next to a school. There's extremely large amounts of congestion during school hours, during pickup and drop-off. There's also a ton of kids that live in that neighborhood. I worry as a father that when my son's playing in the yard, cars can't see if, God forbid, a ball runs into the street and he runs out after it. There's so many cars on that street as it is that I think adding an additional home and adding, more vehicles without off-street parking, should be a huge concern. I don't even know how they would fit that second house on the lot. But I'm not an engineer either, so, and really that's it, that's all I wanted to add.
Okay. Appreciate the input. Thank you. Anyone else to speak in opposition? Okay. Members of the board, anything else? Anything else from planning? We're at the magical moment. I'm going to ask my board for a motion to approve or a motion to deny.
I want to make a motion to deny.
Motion to deny made by Dan DePere. Do we have a second?
Second.
I'll give it that to Rick. Second by Ricky Sahadi. Discussion on the motion. Then on the motion, John Frank,
Yes.
Jim Calkins,
Yes.
Dan DePere,
Yes.
Ricky Sahadi.
Yes.
And Chairman Prairie, yes.
Thank you, John. See you soon.
Thank you. Good seeing you, sir.
I'll be back. But it's simple.
A simple,
That-
please,
that-
maybe something simple. Item number 6, Carlos Estrella, care of attorney Peter A. Salino, 655 President Avenue. Is the subject property map M20, Lot 3. The applicant seeks an after-the-fact variance to maintain the existing structure's chimney and deck, waiving front and side yard setbacks, as well as lot coverage requirements in an S single-family zoning district. Attorney Salino.
Good evening.
I hate after-the-fact variances, so.
It's a great way to start the hearing. Thank you. So Peter Salino on behalf of the applicant, Carlos Estrella. The site is located at 655 President Avenue. If you're going up President Avenue in an easterly direction, you would remember it as a vacant lot before you get to Highland Avenue. Mr. Estrella purchased the lot, built the house on it, and it was through site plan review that these issues were discovered. So the variance request relates to front yard setback, side yard setback, and lot coverage. And ultimately, the hardship to me is that the building is built, the deck is there, the chimney is there, and the paved area is there. So to drill down on the exact issues, on the west side of the house, Mr. Estrella built a chimney, and as a consequence of that, we are now at a side yard setback of 13.2, and the requirement is 15. So, short. The front yard setback is supposed to be 25 feet, and we're at 21.25 as a result of the deck that faces North Park on the front of the house.
That little balcony?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then lastly, the lot coverage requirement is supposed to be 25%, and it's calculated at 27.8 in this instance. So to recap, in the front yard, we're approximately 4 feet over. The side yard, approximately 2.5, 2.7, and on the lot coverage, 2.8 over. And so as a result, we need a variance in order to keep the structures as they currently sit. I have the authority to tell you that this was an innocent mistake. Mr. Estrella did not understand that he was going to violate the zoning regulations. Like I said, this was caught in site plan review. So
if it was caught in site plan review, how did this get built?
fair
It
question.
was caught in site plan review after it was built, so site plan review did not indicate these deficiencies. So site plan review, everything was in complete conformance with the bylaw. When they do a final as-built and
Okay,
provide
so-
how things were built, that's when it gets discovered. And
Okay.
to make sure that the owner has no issue with financing or anything going down the road, relief really should be sought and hopefully granted, so that this would not cloud anything with regards to title and showing compliance with zoning.
I understand entirely. I'm trying to figure out where this fell down.
It fell down at some point in time, the owner deciding to build something that was not shown on his site plan, or shown on his building plans, I guess.
So that balcony and the chimney were add-ons.
That's
They were
right.
not- they were not shown on
They were
site
not
plan
part of the
review.
original plan.
And most likely, the driveway, the size of the driveway was not shown, or was not built in accordance with the plan either. And that's why the lot coverage is over.
Okay. Did the, so the plans were modified as the house was being built, is what I'm kind of
I don't
hearing.
know that the plan was modified. I mean, he was building it, so I don't know that the plan was modified. I think he built something that wasn't on the plan. And then when they went to do site plan review, they said, geez, that's off in these respects, which is why we're here.
Okay. And it is all minor. Someday they're not gonna be minor, and, you know, it's a different thing. It's a brand-new house. There was no reason for this to happen. We had it happen in one of the subdivisions, that somebody built a deck that was actually on somebody else's property. It's like, it's a brand-new subdivision. How'd you manage that? That's okay.
That was a long story. I was the counsel on it.
I think you were the counsel on that one.
I was the title of the jury.
Out.
Found the problem.
Okay, questions from the board at this point?
So Dan, if I understand what you're saying then, the site plan was approved, but then after the site, they have to go back, is that right? After
Yes.
the thing was built?
When everything is built, they have to provide a plan showing what was built and were they in compliance with the site plan that was approved.
Okay.
This is a minimal change. Sometimes we see great changes
Right.
in what shows up on the site plan review.
Right.
Hopefully, those great changes don't have to do with zoning noncompliance, and then we can handle them in-house. This one, we cannot handle in-house because we're not the zoning board of appeals that can grant relief and say, this building can stay 13 feet off of the sideline.
Yeah, I'm just
We
looking to
can't.
clarify the timetable. So the
Yeah.
site plan was approved.
Yep,
Everything was in order.
correct.
And then when they came back afterward,
Yep,
then they caught the,
Correct.
okay, all right, thanks.
All right. Anybody else? Anybody to speak in favor of the petition? Anybody to speak in opposition? You're not going.
Opposition.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm not gonna speak in opposition. I live next door, and
Your name and address, please?
my name and address is Rainey Furtado, 641
Okay.
President Avenue. I never met two people who worked harder on anything in my life than these two people. And my question is, who made the mistake here? I don't even know, I think it was Mr. Estrella's mistake. I think somebody should have pointed them out, that this thing was being built too close to the property line. I was told the other day it was 5.5 feet short, or too close. And that was by somebody in the office. I'm not gonna rat out anybody here, but I was told it was 5.5 feet off. And it's a very beautiful, imposing building. And 5.5 feet going the other way would have been a lot nicer, especially since they had the room on the other side. I just think that in the future, and I'm here to complain to the city, not to Mr. Estrella or Mrs. Estrella, that, you know, these things should be taken care of before they put a stake in the ground, you know?
That's always the intent.
Yeah.
That's always the intent. But please understand at the same time that the officials in the building department can't be out and look at every stage of every project.
I thought they were there every day.
Yeah.
well, they ought to do inspections.
Yeah, but they're not out there
If
with,
they're not provided with the information that says we're not in compliance with zoning, how are they to know that? They're not land surveyors.
right.
So until that takes place, which the land surveyor has provided this plan illustrating that it's 2.5 feet, whatever it is, short, not 5.
Right.
That's what we have to rely on. Doesn't matter if we go out there and measure it with a tape and try and determine where it is, we're not licensed land surveyors. This gentleman is that said, this is the exact dimension. That's what this board can act upon.
Yep.
It's not up for the building department to babysit people that get a permit based upon information that they submit and then want to go build something else in clear violation of what was approved to be built.
Also the driveway, it was clear, I was told by the building department.
I'm not in the building department, but go ahead.
Well, your other employee of the city of Fall River, that it was supposed to be a 13-foot driveway. And I believe it's like 34, 35 feet. Why wasn't that caught?
It is when they submit the plan that shows this is what we just poured for a driveway. It is getting caught.
It's not just that, it's the curb cut, it's the full width of it.
No, they did go for a curb cut extension to the city council for it to be greater than 16. They did do that. And we made sure that they did that. Because actually, when I was out speaking to you about the drainage issues, I made sure, because they went and they cut the driveway without the permit. I told them then, you can't have a driveway that big, you need to come in. So that was caught at that point in time. We don't stand there when they're pouring concrete for their driveway to make sure that it's in compliance with their site plan. That's what the site plan review is, that's what the process does. It says you can have a driveway of this big. They decided to build it bigger. We find out when they submit this plan and then tell them your lot coverage is too big.
Okay. At what point did you get an occupancy permit?
Does not have.
He doesn't have one.
Might have a temporary, but.
No, he doesn't.
Doesn't even.
They would,
is he
Glenn
living
wouldn't give
there?
him a temporary.
No?
No.
Okay.
So you're not in the house yet?
No, he's living in a tenement right now because he can't move in.
Okay. It looked like somebody was in when I was out there last weekend, that's all.
I go back and forth because I have.
Pardon?
I go back and forth there because I have tools. I have to take care of the garden and I have some water there, the yard and all that.
No one else in opposition?
I stated that wasn't an opposition.
No, yeah.
I just wanted clarification.
No, that's good.
Just easier to ask for the forgiveness than it is permission. That's what the difference, that's the difference.
I understand the matter at hand. I see it. It's, in this case, it's minor. I leave it to the board at this point to make a motion to,
Mr. Chairman, I move that we grant the variance requested.
I'll second.
any discussion? Then on the motion, John Frank,
Yes.
Jim Calkins.
Yes.
Dan DePere,
Yes.
Ricky Sahadi.
Yes.
Sahadi, I'm sorry.
Sandy.
And Chairman Pereira, no. But it passes, so you're all set.
Thank you all. I'll explain
Item number 7, Around the Clock Services, Inc. Also, Attorney Mark L. Levin. Knew you'd be back. 280 and 282 Ridge Street is the subject property, map G-07, lot 52. Applicant seeks a special permit to divide the parcel into 2 lots, leaving the existing 3-family dwelling, 280 Ridge Street, on proposed lot 1, and an existing single-family dwelling, 282 Ridge Street, on the proposed lot 2. According to city records, both dwellings were built around 1900, which affords the property the opportunity for subdivision by special permit per 86-423B of the City of Fall River zoning ordinances. The property is located in an apartment A2 zoning district. Counsel?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, again for the record, Mark L. Levin, 138 Rock Street, Fall River, Massachusetts. As I promised, an easier one. This matter is a special permit. It's provided under the bylaw. We have 2 structures that were built before zoning occurred. I'm asking the board to vote that this is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood or the district than it would be leaving 2 houses on 1 lot, instead providing 2 separate lots with 2 separate buildings as provided under the special permit bylaw. There's no changes to the buildings. The only thing that will be is a cross easement for the walkway. There's no parking now. It's not changing anything. We're not adding to it. It's just putting a line around the building in the front and leaving the building on the back with access to the frontage. It's just a very simple project that, it's there, and the parties want to just have them as separate ownerships for finance purposes.
Okay, well, if I had $1 for every one of these that we've had, I'd buy everybody a great dinner. Luckily, some people left, so the dinner's better for everyone else.
Was this property just recently bought within the last 6 months or a year?
Yes.
So they knew before they bought the property it was one
One
property,
parcel,
right?
yes.
Yep, they knew. The only thing, and the board probably doesn't have control of this, but when I look at these kind of things, I look at, you're gonna have two separate owners now. So if there's fights between those people, the owners are probably not gonna live there, they're gonna call the police. And as of February 28th of this year, there have been 12,980 calls for service to the police. So I look at something like this, that we're adding on to services here that we don't have right now. That would be a concern of having two separate owners and them fighting.
Well, you're gonna have separate people in the units, whether it's
But you're gonna
one-
have one owner that's gonna deal with this. You're gonna have two separate owners that are gonna be fighting.
Well,
And we have that happen here in Fall River. Numerous times we've had that. So what happens is, they sell the house, they move on. The city of Fall River and the other taxpayers are paying this. That would be my concern with it. Not that I can vote on this, but,
Well,
and that's
no,
my
but-
concern with a lot of the three-family things here. We get two separate owners, and you get that fighting. City council gets this all the time. They get people coming in, and the city's gotta do something. They can't,
Well, it'd be no different than the owner at 270, it's a three-family fighting with a neighbor there. I mean, the bylaw is provided to allow these to be separated without a variance, as long as it's not gonna be causing more of a problem than it does now. And whether you have tenants or owners in there, you're still gonna have parties in a neighborhood anyway. I mean, and it's, to say that these people are gonna be the worst people in Fall River as compared to some, no, I
Yeah,
know
no,
you're
I'm
not saying that.
I'm just saying.
I know
when
you're
you
not,
have-
but
when you have two
it's speculative,
two
yeah.
2,900 square foot lots with two separate owners, the owners are probably not even living there. They're gonna be like, you guys handle it yourself. They don't handle it, the police get involved.
Well,
That's the only-
my assumption, the single family, you'll probably have an owner occupier there. That's my guess, the one in the back. I mean, that's generally what happens. The three obviously is an apartment building, whether someone who's an owner moves in and has other tenants there, that's something that could happen too. I mean, I understand what your concern is, but that's a general concern about any multifamily neighborhood.
Any neighborhood.
Yeah.
Well, I just think that we always come before and you were saying this is not gonna change or hurt the neighborhood. That is a detriment to the neighborhood later on.
Well, I mean, that's
It may
speculative.
improve the neighborhood.
Yeah. I mean, you can't say that just because you're putting the lots in its own separate lot itself, because, then you would never have subdivisions. You'd have everyone owning large pieces of tracts of one big house, and I'm not.
What's
I'm not-
wrong with that?
Well, I'm saying, but the specifically the zoning bylaws, I mean, the city council voted with the support of the zoning department and planning board to create this niche, to take a property that has multiple families that've been there forever and allow these just to be on separate lots. We're not changing the property, the buildings are the same, we're not eliminating anything from these lots, they are gonna be the same. You're not changing, I mean, if there are 4 families living there now, there'll be 4 families living there once they're split up. We're not taking parking away, because there's no parking on this, unfortunately. I would have liked to seen some myself, but, 12 feet, I don't know if gives enough for anyone to,
No,
park there, but.
The shape of the lot doesn't allow for
Yeah.
parking. You'd have to cut in and build
You're
2
right.
retaining walls, so.
All easements will be put in place. There's gonna be an easement there for that walkway.
Just for the walkway, yeah.
Separate utilities,
Separate utilities,
no fences.
No fence.
no fence.
No fences along the new interior line.
Right, the interior lines.
Correct.
The exterior, the people might want to have that themselves.
And just so that the board knows, 86-423B, the reason why that was implemented, because the non-conforming zoning condition of having multiple structures on the lot was determined to be a greater non-conformity than having them on smaller
Separate
individual
lots.
lots. So it's really
Right.
what non-conformity do you want to get rid of? So this gets rid of the non-conformity of having 2 structures on
On
a
one
lot,
lot.
which would not be permitted.
I get it. Understood. Any other questions from the board at this point? Anybody here to speak in favor of the petition? Anybody to speak against? There hearing none. I would ask the board to render a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I find that there is no substantial hardship to the
Detriment
neighborhood
to the
area,
neighborhood,
and that move that the special permit be granted.
Okay, you want to do those as one, so no substantial detriment, no, yeah.
Second.
Detriment,
Conditions.
seconded. Discussion on the motion, on the
Wanna add the
motion.
conditions?
Pardon?
We gotta do two.
Oh, yeah, add the, sorry.
We gotta do two.
Yep.
You want to amend it?
No, bifurcated, isn't this
Yeah.
a bifurcated?
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
so not sufficient, not substantially detrimental to the neighborhood. Okay, that's what we're voting on, not the petition itself. And still seconded. On the motion, John Frank.
Yes.
Jim Calkins.
Yes.
Dan DePere.
Yes.
Ricky Sahadi. Sahadi.
Yes.
Do it all the time. Chairman Prairie, yes. And then on the special permit,
I move that we grant the special permit conditional upon a easement being filed and on record, and that
separate utilities,
separate utilities, and that no
Interior.
division, interior division along the property line be created.
no fencing.
No fencing.
No barrier.
Yeah.
No barrier.
Yeah, no barrier. In case somebody wants to build a stone wall and tell us it's not a fence. Do we have a second on the motion?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. On the motion, John Frank?
Yes.
Jim Calkins?
Yes.
Dan DePere?
Yes.
Rick Sahadi?
Yes.
Chairman Pereira, yes.
Thank you, and
Had a tough
that
night, my
concludes
friend.
my, well, it happens.
Go home and have a sherry or
Rick, I'll tell cousin Steve I'm gonna change his last name.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call
He'll
tomorrow.
get it right, yeah.
That's okay. I get it wrong, too.
Council, we are at Timothy and Tiffany Long, item number 8, subject property is 677 Meridian Street, map V03, lot 1. The applicant seeks a variance to demolish the existing non-conforming single-family dwelling and construct a new single-family dwelling on the property, waiving side yard setbacks and an R30 single-family zoning district.
Bless you, Nina.
Council.
Thank you, good evening. Peter Solino on behalf of the applicant, Timothy Long. With me tonight is Timothy Long. The site in front of you is the Long Family Homestead. Is that a fair way to characterize it? It was your...
Site, so this was my wife's great-grandmother's property who passed away beginning of COVID.
Okay.
And I purchased this property last July, if I'm correct.
Okay. And the proposal includes demolishing the existing structure, which, if you've driven by or gone to the site, it's close to Meridian Street, and it's only about 6.75 per the plan to the north property line. So the proposal is demolish that structure, rebuild a single-family structure on the existing non-conforming lot. The two waivers being sought would be side yard, and because of the orientation of the site, we're talking about 7 feet to the north and 15 feet to the south. What is required in the R30 district is 25 feet. So the waivers, again, are side yard setbacks to the north and south. We're okay front, we're okay rear, and again, the lot is pre-existing non-conforming.
Yep, you got a long, narrow lot, you've got wetland to the south of you, so interesting lots out there.
Certainly. So I think that the hardship here is the long, narrow shape of the lot, and ultimately, I think Mr. Long is bettering the lot with this proposal by removing the dilapidated structure and constructing the new property. And the intent, for what it's worth, is that Mr. Pacheco is going to build the house. If there are any questions specific to the
My contract.
to the house.
But I will add that I think it's good to know that the current structure has a cesspool, and I'm gonna hook into public sewer, so significantly improving the watershed. And seeing that we're right on the reservation, I would think that that is ideal.
Okay. Questions from the board? Wow. Anybody here to speak in favor? Anybody to speak in opposition? Hearing none and no questions, board, from planning?
No, the only thing, because I pick, the only thing I would have proposed was to split the side yard setbacks. But if the board's okay with it, it is further away than what the current structure is and pushed further back. The abutting properties are owned by the water
Right.
department.
So it's never gonna be built
And as you see,
upon.
Mr. Lavoisier did not stay to oppose, so no.
It says quite a bit, yeah.
So I have nothing really to critique on this. There's no lot coverage issues. There is no lot coverage requirement for the zoning district, so.
Right.
No, in full support of it.
And
If
all-
I could, I'm sorry. go
All
ahead.
the existing, there's a couple ancillary structures all around that says it's gonna all be demolished.
That's the intent.
Sheds and
I can't wait.
garages and all that. Okay.
Yeah, that's like a
Something in the
old-
back farm or whatever.
There's an old garage and an old, like, where I used to keep goats there.
Okay. Yeah.
You're not gonna keep goats?
I can't wait to.
Cuts down on lawn mowing.
That's how you started.
Mr. Chairman, I move granting of the request for a variance.
Okay. Any conditions?
Just as stated, that they obtain connection to the public sewage system.
Is it connected to water or does it have a well?
No, it's connected to water. I shut the
Is
water
it?
off a few months ago
Okay.
because I was paying a bill for no reason.
So it's on city water now?
Correct.
Okay.
Second.
We have a second from Dan. Discussion on the motion? On the motion, John Frank?
Yes.
Jim Calkins?
Yes.
Dan DePere?
Yes.
Ricky Sahadi?
Yes.
And Chairman Pereira, yes. Congratulations, that's really cool, you're keeping the family property, I like that. Good to hear.
All right, have a good night.
All right, item number 9, Brian Texera, care of Attorney Peter A. Salino. Subject property is 327 Chicago Street, map E17, lot 9. The applicant seeks a variance to subdivide the existing parcel into 2 lots, leaving the existing 2-family dwelling on one lot, while constructing a new single-family dwelling on the second lot, waiving all zoning requirements in an R8 single-family zoning district. Counsel.
Good evening, Peter Solino on behalf of the applicant and owner of the property, Brian Texera. Brian is here with me along with his wife. By way of introduction to the project itself, Brian lives in the 2-family structure labeled on the plan as 327 Chicago Street. Brian would like to build the single-family house that is labeled as proposed 1-family dwelling on parcel 2 on the plan. The proposal was before the board previously with this exact plan and was granted pursuant to a variance decision that was stamped by the city clerk on June 20th, 2019. And ultimately, what ended up happening was Mr. Texera was shipped out. He's an Air Force service member, and he was shipped to Abu Dhabi, and he could not perform or exercise the variance. So he is back, obviously. He is now in the Air Force Reserve, and he is a firefighter in the city of Fall River. He wants to build a single-family house and live there with his family. So the request for the variance, or the variances, are as follows. As it relates to parcel 1 on the plan, the requirement for the side setback is 15 feet. And as you can see from the plan, if you're looking at the eastern side of 327, the proposal is 5 feet. In the rear, the requirement is 20. The proposal is 10 as a result of the jog to keep the square footage accurate. And then on parcel 2, the request for waiver would be frontage because you need 80 feet. And there's only 60 on proposed parcel 2. And the side setback to the west of the single-family dwelling is proposed to be 10 feet, and the requirement is 15. So those would be the requested variances. The square footages are appropriate. Frontage of parcel 1 is appropriate. I should also note for the record, should the board be inclined to re-grant this, there were certain conditions, which I'm assuming you're aware of, in the prior decision, which Mr. Texera is certainly amenable to and agrees to be bound by.
When was this variance approved the first time?
June 20th, 2019.
19.
Was one of the conditions, because I don't have it in front of me, no further subdivision of parcel 1?
Parcel 1 conditions, no building permit issued until site plan review. Must provide 4 off-street parking spaces. Must provide landscape screening of parking area along the west of the paved area. So no, Mr. Frank.
My only concern is the way it's being carved out. Eventually, parcel 1 could potentially be carved out. Now you're leaving a 3-family, a 2-family on a small postage stamp lot.
Understood. And historically, these were 3 merged lots, so I
Right.
think those were the original lots. But, I mean, so what they're saying is parcel 1, sort of the left side, they don't want you to be able to divide it in the future. They don't want you to come back and say, okay, so my client agrees to that condition if that's what the board desires.
Just so there's enough of the 4 parking spaces to the side of that.
Correct.
Since I have to ask a question, anybody here to speak in favor? I figure you already are. Anybody to speak in opposition? That's covered.
I just, when you read your initial waiving all.
That's the publication, but I don't think we need all.
Yeah, I just don't like that word because that means we could go 20 feet or 200 feet high or.
Yeah,
You know, I think that I have absolutely no question. I certainly would never penalize somebody who was called to active duty. Yeah. But it's just that waiving all, I would grant without doubt those as requested, or those variances as shown on the map or on the site plan.
Okay.
That I have no problem with, but
Yeah.
do you?
No, I get
see
it,
that?
and it's just, we see it all the time, and it makes me twitch. It's like, somebody comes in and asks for 5 variances, and it's, because, just waive everything. All right, any other questions, any discussion? I'll accept the motion. We already have.
I'd like to add just one thing.
Please.
Good-looking plan,
Good-looking plan, yeah.
so. You don't see him like this anymore.
You just don't see him like okay.
It's getting late at 1.
Motion, please, it's getting late, it's getting late.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the variance conditional on site plan review and no further subdivision of parcel 1.
And what about the other,
Shown on plan.
the other conditions from the original approval?
Those,
Right, nope. What about the fingers, right here, the conditions?
yeah, oh, there were multiple in there.
4 off-street parking.
If it would be easier, we can just stipulate to the conditions in the variance
To the-
decision
Yeah,
dated
yeah,
June
yeah.
20th,
Yeah.
2019.
Yep, with the addition
In
of the no
accordance
no
with
further
previously
subdivision of
approved
parcel.
variance.
Sounds good.
Okay. You have a second on that?
I'll second.
Very good. Discussion on the motion, hearing none on the motion. John Frank?
Yes.
Jim Calkins?
Yes.
Dan DePere?
Yes.
Ricky Sahadi?
Yes.
And Chairman Ferrari, yes.
Thank you all.
Busy night, good luck.
Thank you for your
Good luck, thank you for your service.
All right. Receipt of correspondence, item 10, review and discuss notice of adjudication and public comment hearing for a petition filed by National Grid and the Department of Public Utilities to modify existing electric transmission line rights-of-way that exit from National Grid's Pottersville switching station in Somerset, crossing over the Taunton River and into Fall River, and continuing easterly to Sykes Road and substation in Fall River.
move acceptance and place on file.
Very good. So, the item that never goes away.
Do we need a
Oh,
second?
yeah,
Do we need a second for place on file?
it's just receipt of correspondence. I think we-
Yeah, you might as well, just a
Second.
Second.
All On the motion, John Frank,
Yes.
Jim Calkins.
Yes.
Dan DePere.
Yes.
Ricky Sahaji.
Yes.
Update
And
to
Chairman
zoning
Prairie,
board of
yes.
appeal rules and
Okay.
regulations.
Here we are. Discussion, review, and discuss proposed updates in zoning board of appeals rules and regulations. Which we-
So if I
Different than
can-
the files, I mean,
So board members, what you see here is a neatened up, cleaned up version of what, when someone comes to the office and asks for, what are the zoning board's rules and regulations for filing and all those kinds of things, we hand them a number of documents of different fonts, text sizes, everything under the sun. So what we've done is made a concise, clear, singular packet that contains everything that someone could need.
It's revolutionary.
So, by all means, you do not have to act on this evening, but take time to read through it. Go on the website, and you can see the various documents and how they float around. So this is just an attempt to make things simpler and more concise, so when we get plans submitted and they're missing items A, B, and C, and they said, well, we didn't know, well, it's in the rules and regulations. Well, we didn't get those, so they're there. Now, whether somebody looked on the website or not and found the various different documents, this now puts it all under one roof. So there's no excuse for not knowing how things get handled before this board.
and in the proposed revision, you upped the number of petitions to 25 from our 15 that we had voted on a couple of years
Yeah,
ago.
I mean, by all means, those are the kind of things, so read through those and whatever. We haven't been close in a while. So if
I
that,
mean, just knowing how I feel after the number that we went through tonight, I
Yeah.
would not want to go through another 16 or whatever.
Well, you know, it's interesting, to that, some boards, a lot of boards, will not necessarily set a number of petitions to be heard, but they'll put a time limit on the hearings.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's,
We have that.
Most boards you
It's 3
do not
minutes.
get a decision the night that you are.
That's
You
correct.
first present. You could be at 6 hearings before you get a vote. That's not historically how this board has acted. So you are correct. You can give,
I've been in front of boards and had one big monster come in, and it just takes up an hour and a half, 2 hours, and you're sitting there knowing they're gonna cut you off at 10:30. And, you've got a half-hour presentation yourself, so it's like, well, I guess I'll drive for 2 hours next month.
Yeah, well, just watching reaction from people that come in, that if they've stayed for 2 hours or whatever your time and their project did come up and they gotta come back again, even though it was
But it's-
scheduled for the night, I'd much
I'm-
rather
I'm
go
not
with a
recommending
small.
we do
Yeah,
that,
no, but that's my,
Some boards also meet twice a month.
right.
well, you
Depending on
you
the number
also
of-
have the option of scheduling an additional meeting if
Motion
there
to
is.
And it's
Deny.
usually the smaller towns. I'm doing a ton of work up in Maine right now, in all these tiny towns in Maine. It's twice a month. First and third Thursdays of every month,
And
and
that's all boards, not just the
That's
zoning
all
board
the
of
boards,
appeals.
yeah.
Here, every board is just singular. So
Yep.
what I would recommend is, especially with the time of day that it is,
yep,
read through these, mark them up. I mean, this is a fluid document, by no means is any of this really locked in.
I'll
So if
definitely
there's
go
something
through
you
it.
want changed or addressed now, while we're
Yep.
creating this, it would be the time to do it.
it's a great effort. Thank you
Anything,
for the
you
whole
know.
staff, that's awesome.
Sorry it took so long to get it to you, but
It's okay.
We're
Yeah, a
working on
couple
that.
other things to do. Citizens input, somebody actually signed up and she is not here.
who was it?
Approval of minutes from March 16th, 2023 meeting.
Motion to waive the reading of the minutes.
Second.
Second. You're tired, aren't you?
Hungry.
We have a motion and a second discussion on the motion, hearing none on the motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Jim,
Oh, sorry.
John Frank,
Yes.
Jim Calkins,
Yes.
Dan DePere,
Yes.
Ricky Sahadi.
Yes.
And Chairman Prairie, yes. Motion to adjourn.
Wait,
Can I ask, before you adjourn,
What?
nothing to table the,
she's a
rules and
stickler, isn't she?
regulations?
We
It can
need
just
to
stay
take-
on there, because it was only on for
Just
discussion.
stay
so
on,
that's
it's a
fine.
discussion item, so.
So
it's
no
not-
formal vote. But before we end, I'd like to acknowledge Nina and Chris's hard work with the whole iPad program that was singular to their efforts. Takes a lot, and they're doing this for planning and conservation. So it takes a lot to get all of this information, creating the new summaries, all of the different things we're trying to provide you with information to help you do your job. So I'd like to publicly acknowledge their efforts, for sure.
And I also think that's another
Thank you,
reason
Nina.
I keep
Thank you so
number
much.
of vacations in the evening.
And at the next meeting, can you make sure I get a different chair in this?
Oh, they're all terrible. I'm gonna talk to
They're all
facilities
terrible.
tomorrow about, I can't sit in this
Steel
wheelchair
chair.
anymore.
Yeah, got an iPad. We need to go out.
Can we do a motion to
on a phone
adjourn so we can let
I felt like-
Fall River Government TV go? Motion to adjourn, second on that. We're going outside the norm. All in favor? Aye.
Who seconded that?